Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Hello. We are the Keshe Foundation. Our mission is to bring peace on earth and join humanity with the universal community. We wish and work to bring man as equal to all beings in the universe. By teaching plasma science and technology equally to everyone, no one is left out and no one is abused due to lack of knowledge. By donating to us, you can help achieve this goal. keshefoundation.org/donate.
And we welcome everyone to the Keshe American Knowledge Team. It is November 2nd, 2025. I'm your host, Mark Anderson, along with Alex Skork and along with each and every one of the participants. And as people like to say, this is a round table of knowledge in a way. Everyone's equal and we all have equal opportunity to share what we understand about the knowledge or what we think we understand about the knowledge. And of course, the knowledge continues to grow, but yet we're in a beautiful position and we're quite well briefed for the events that most of humanity is not quite aware of, or they've been, again, misled into believing certain objects are rocks or other things, but we've certainly gained a deeper understanding, and maybe we'll start meeting some of these visitors in the very near future. So today we'll cover a little bit about the 614. As we saw, Mr. Keshe was a bit under the weather, so please pulse and give him that wellness or whatever fields he may need. As I was joking the other day, now we put Mr. Keshe in the system. But of course, I'm sure he's been leaving everything in the foundation, meaning he's expiring himself in a way. All his energies are being devoted from one meeting to another, from one teaching to another, from one paper, from one development, and so on. So I'm sure he's capable and realizes, but as someone said earlier, sometimes he lets things go for a while before he actually goes into the lab and develops something to even help himself. But it's a beautiful time. Visitors are coming in. As he said, they have a lot to teach mankind. But before we go any further in the 614, we're going to just reaffirm the ethos of the Keshe Foundation and with ourselves, of course. As he said, we did gain an aspect of transmutation, but we haven't become men of peace yet, full men of peace. And this is part of perhaps this interaction or what these One Nation networks will do. Yeah, you say you're not peaceful, you're not fighting in any wars, you're not really hurting anybody, but again, as we look deeper into the knowledge, there's other wars taking place as well with the vertical and horizontal people, and this is part of the structure that we're used to on this planet, and I think that's part of the structure that's going to change this entire feeding aspect. Again, it could be a slow progression or it could be much quicker, or you can decide the way you want to apply it to yourself. But at least we have that understanding about consuming others, and maybe we'll hear this from some of these travelers of the universe, how they do respect all life and again, have that ethos of serving others and, of course, elevating the, as Mr. Keshe indicated, a superior being never in space, never abuses an inferior being. Although we did hear in the workshop how we could become perhaps abused if we're not a little bit sharper, or they show some things that appear to be magic. But again, the knowledge seekers will not be fooled. It's the process of creation using magnetic gravitational fields, which apparently this group coming in are very well versed in, perhaps traveling for who knows how long and maintaining their structure and the rest. So before we go any further, let's again, we're introducing a new science. We're introducing a new, or we're adding a new science to man's knowledge, and we're adding, in a way, a new ethos. And of course, we're adding a new language with some of the terms that are becoming more popular, like nano and pico and other things, plasmatic or magnetic fields, all these sorts of things. So this is part of the ethos of the Keshe Foundation, where, again, we have that wish to be peaceful the way the Creator is peaceful. And of course, there are systems to help us to achieve this. As he said, we're not quite there yet. And this is one of the pillars of peace that we haven't fully ingrained within our structure. And again, maybe you aren't consuming other things, but the idea of the thinking, speaking, and acting can also create a condition or a field of unpeacefulness. And again, we need to balance that out. So this is the World Peace Treaty, again, initially offered to the world leaders and the world religious leaders to sign themselves into peace. Again, it's between you and your soul. And as you become more peaceful, I think you emit energies or plasmas of peace that others can absorb and perhaps follow the same path. By signing this, I think you're creating a reactor as well between you and this, and also between others that may see it or may not even see it. That was one of the beauties he said about the One Nation Network, was that in time, once it's developed a little bit more, they will use the soul of the peaceful people on this planet to then spread the knowledge somehow across humanity. But again, he said, we take men of peace and use them. And this will come in the road, or down the road, or he'll explain a little bit more in the coming time. So peace is important. I never thought about eating animals or plants as any sort of unpeaceful action. But now that we start to understand the process of creation, it becomes a little bit more apparent to us about the creation of the soul and the release of the soul, and how we're involved in this process more than we should be. And of course, that leads back to the lack of energies that the creation provided on this planet for us to live in that particular way, without killing, without destruction. And this is part of the systems, the One Nation Network and others, that will bring the energies that the universe or the creation should have brought. And perhaps this is more happens more in the universe than we realize, and this is part of the corrective process. And as Mr. Keshe said, the network, this grid or this mesh network, is not only for planet Earth, but this mesh will go across the universe, if I understand that. And of course, that's hard to digest in a way intellectually, that such a powerful system could be created on this tiny little speck of dust and reach and elevate the entire structure. But that's what it looks like at this point in time. But we'll have to see, because we're just becoming aware that we are part of a much larger structure. And maybe we're being elevated to play a pivotal role in the elevation of the entire universe, that every, or the entire creation, that every created being has that understanding and ability to move or transit between the two dimensions of physicality and energy. So, our World Peace Treaty. Would anyone like to read the World Peace Treaty? Don't be scared, it won't bite you. Okay, you can find this on most of the websites, the Keshe Foundation as well. And again, it looks like quite a simple document, but it has far-reaching effects, I think, as you engage with it. And again, look at the different struggles we're all going through. But if it's your wish to be peaceful, then again, you don't even need to sign it. You don't need to sign it anyway. You can sign it with the pen of your soul, or in the plasmatic dimension of energy. As we know, the pen will be the physicality aspect of it. And Mr. Keshe has often said that when you go out into the universe, you'll probably never see anything written but the balance of the fields of the soul of the existence. So, World Peace Treaty, we as citizens of the earth from this moment on, accept to lay down all tools of aggression and war. We shall never think about getting involved or incite war, or develop or use any tools of war on this planet or in space. And to this we all agree and swear with our, and you can delete as appropriate, the nation, the territory. You can pledge the religion, the city, the town, the body, or the soul. I know when my father signed this, he actually pledged the Marine Corps. Of course, he was quite connected to it. But anyway, simply put your name, signature, date, on position on behalf of the nation, the territory, the council, the religion, the city, the town, or as an individual. And of course, you've just created a reactor, a very simple paper reactor, but a very powerful reactor in my understanding. Again, this is just my understanding. I'm being impartial here. And of course, Mr. Keshe asked us to be impartial. This is the way I'm looking at it, or this is the way I'm looking at an aspect of it. After signing this treaty, be proud to display this certificate wherever you consider being important to you, that everyone can see and know your ethos to fellow men and the mankind and other created beauties of the Creator. And of course, the One Nation Network will help us a little bit more to achieve this gradually, collectively, but for sure to help reach that point. As he said, this one of the aspects that we're sort of lacking in is this killing. And of course, the seeds, as he said, I don't want to feed you contaminated plants. And the regular fields seem to have no sort of taste to them. And I think that's why they want to develop a certain amount of different vegetables and different substance made from pure seeds. And this is one of the work of, and this will definitely satisfy our emotions when you actually taste the apple rather than having to add your own emotions to it. But again, that's an aspect, let's say, of our physicality. But how about when we think destructively, or we talk destructively or hurtful? Alex brings this up all the time about the loosh harvesting and trying to steal energies in a way or get rises out of other people. And then, of course, our behavior as well. So we need to become peaceful in that thinking, speaking, and acting. At least the thinking is that energy dimension, and the speaking, I think, is where the soul of physicality meets the soul of the man in the voice box area. And that, of course, the tongue is quite a wild instrument. It can be used quite the wrong way. So this is another aspect of the world peace. And again, it's between you and yourself, and I think only you can control it. But with the new systems, it'll help us to achieve that in a less frustrating way, perhaps, without the pains that you normally would go through when you think of not eating another creature or something. What am I going to have? But these systems, as he said, when you sort of fall down, it'll bring you up. When you need certain energies and you don't have them, it'll also sort of boost you. And one of the most profound things, I think, in the One Nation Network is that you'll be connected to universal knowledge. And he said, if you don't connect to that system, you'll deprive yourself of this universal knowledge. So there'll be the teachings and the books and the rest of this, but there'll also be something that happens to you as you interact with the system and the dimension of energy or the plasmatic magnetic gravitational fields. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, we should go to the Keshe Foundation store. And what we played in the beginning, of course, you saw the Keshe coin, which is not a cryptocurrency. Again, we all know this. This is a gaming coin. And of course, as you play a certain game called Enlightenment, which will be embedded into the system, it will allow you to earn tokens. Those tokens will then be applied to certain purchases within the Keshe Foundation store, like some of these amazing offers that all have been made with plasma technology, all have been made for the elevation of the soul of the man, but yet they also provide other functions beyond just, we would say, well, a soap just cleans your body. But there are other fields put in, even to connect people together in a way, strangers together. As he said, if we give you a soap from a certain lot, you will actually be connected to other people. So it's not only functional, let's say, for some of these products as we see here. And one of them, what I was just thinking about, was the migraine cap. So it has more effect than what you see it's offered for. And it brings some sort of balance, as most of the plasma products do. But this is the Keshe coin, and this is a wallet as well, and you'll be able, and it's only €100 plus the value added tax, I believe. So this will get you into the entire network. Not everyone needs to have one of the One Nation Network units. If you can, you're encouraged to do that, because in a way it doesn't belong to you, although you will benefit some reward, about 2.4 Keshe coins a year. But this is to be gifted back to humanity, that they create this dome or this sort of above the soil and also in the oceans. He talked about putting these in the oceans as well. I think this is one of the ways the AI is going to get changed. Almost the same way when you drink GANS water, it goes through your body, even before you touch the cup. But anyway, as the water goes into your structure, it actually takes from you what you don't need and gives to you what you do need, and brings a sense of balance. It may do that to the AI as well. As the Chinese have said, they're going to now put the AI in the oceans. Isn't that interesting? For the cooling and the savings of the energy, but of course that AI will bring in that water through its structure. And perhaps this is how, as he said, we're going to embed in the AI remotely a brain cell and an emotion. Could the GANS material do that in combination with the air that's brought into the AI system as well? That'll be from the dome that we're creating. So very important. I think this is the way the most of the technology will be brought. And then, of course, we have these other visitors coming in, which are about to do some teaching as well. So we're going to hear this. We're going to play the 613 announcements again, because I don't think we're fully understanding some of the ramifications and how this system is going to work. Of course, it's out for test. They have a number of these out for test at this point in time. And this unit, some of these units, or perhaps it was only the test ones, I don't know. But I thought he said not everyone will receive the cosmic ray antenna with this, but maybe it will be. I don't know. But this was part of a question asked when you talk about further developments. He said, we're trying to use the cosmic ray antenna to actually power this unit where you wouldn't even need to plug it in. And then from that understanding, you'll be able to take what you need from this unit in the dimension of energy you use for lighting or heating or other ways. As he said, perhaps the energy dimension, matter state energy, which you'd use for power, will eventually come through these units as well, without even a connection to your, let's say, breaker box. I don't know, but there's many beautiful things. So this is the main thrust as I see it, although there's other offers, as we know, in the store for research. The transmutation may take a brief hiatus. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see what Mr. Keshe announces on that. Then, of course, there's still the New Year's package, which we've seen and which is right here. And of course, it's, and you can still order a Halloween pack. I think there's probably some left over, or perhaps they have something that they could put together for you. But this is the next offer coming up, which is the New Year or the Christmas pack. And it basically works the same way with the same level of bid. And of course, you will receive more than what you bid for in each and every package. And of course, as Mr. Keshe said, these, even the butterfly, which is probably the least expensive product in the Keshe Foundation store, is priceless. And that is hard to imagine how he sees it as priceless, but if we understood it better, can't be replicated, as most of the products in the Keshe Foundation store cannot be replicated, as I understand it. So if you want the beef and the real products, you go to the Keshe Foundation store, but continue to work on your own and learn some of the lab work and some of the testing. It all adds to the knowledge, as I understand it. And as he said, the creator is familiar with both matter state and energy state and uses both when need be. So we do need to be familiar with the matter state as well. Any thoughts or any questions or comments about the last workshop before we're going to go to the 613? Before we go to the 614, it's such a short teaching in 614, again profound but short, which is only 17 or so minutes, I think. So we're going to cover that again, more about the creator in the 614. And this is the new cycle of teaching. What is gravity made of, I think, and understanding again more about ourselves as we're made in the image of the creator and so on. And of course, he went through a few drawings about how that little ripple or moving that little muscle creates that sort of magnetic field, which then connects to other things and gets things done. But this is the energy dimension. And of course, that's our true nature, even though we feel so physical and we're still heavily weighted in the matter state, we're moving away from it. And all of these systems are sort of made to do that. Not to move away completely, I don't think, but to be able to comfortably operate in both of these dimensions. And of course, as you use some of these systems, it becomes ingrained within you. Then, of course, the research centers will be opening up in the coming period. I'm not sure exactly when. But if anyone else would like to add anything, please feel free, or we're going to go to the announcements from 6:13, if I can find it, and then we're going to go back to the 6:14. Or anyone want to make any thoughts or comments? Again, there is so much to absorb, and each and every one of us has a different way, in a way. I was looking in the 612, I think it was, how our brains are different structures, and which creates a different emotion or something, different inertia within that space. And he was saying how sometimes it's difficult this is why two people from different parts of the world don't always understand each other. And I think that is also the same with the plasma technology. Even though it's the energy level, I'm still interpreting it through my physicality a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And that's why I may not understand it exactly the way you understand it. As Mr. Keshe said, I say plasma to 1,000 people. In an audience, I'll get 999 thinking something else than what I actually meant. So it's just an amazing journey that we're on, and I think we're here definitely. We'll have to see how these new visitors interact. He said it could be next month, it could be in a decade, or it could be in a century before we see them manifest. But I think more and more talk will be going on as if they've seeded the solar system and they also are seeding or visiting this planet in those smaller crafts, many more people will want explanations about what they're seeing or feeling. And again, I don't know. It would be amazing if they come and say, oh, you want to learn what we're all about? Go to the Keshe Foundation teachings and start looking at the Knowledge Seekers workshops, because Mr. Keshe is our friend and we know who he is. Apparently, that's what they talk about around the universe, Mr. Keshe said at one time. They always talk about the creator in Mitra, the creator in Mitra. So obviously, I think they are familiar with a universal teacher, and hopefully they'll refer. This would give us quite a heavily weighted confidence. But again, he said some people on this planet may look at these creatures or people as gods because they can do some of the things we only see done in the movies. And of course, one of them was the idea of now you see me and now you don't, which Mr. Keshe said we all have that capability. You're still in the room, but the others can't see you. So once some of these demonstrations happen, and probably many other things, as he said, things that we haven't even been able to imagine that can be done, they will perhaps be showing. And I don't know how this is going to work out, but obviously a new chapter in the scientific community is going to have to be written unless they just disregard it all. Anyone have any thoughts about that, or has anyone seen any of the visitors? Perhaps have you felt, or I know certain people have said they felt many different energies, but let's, if there's no comments, we're going to go to the 613th workshop for the announcements, if I have it here. And that wasn't the one I was looking for. Let's just see if I have it listed over here. And this wasn't the one either. Okay, you know what we did? We brought this. Okay, this is not the one, sorry. All right, what we'll do for the 613, I think I'm going to have to find the spot. I think there was two parts where he talked about this One Nation network, and I think we can go right about somewhere about here, and Rick will come in. And these are the announcements. There was no announcements last week, as you know, Mr. Keshe was a bit under the weather, so give to him, pulse him. And as he's been giving to us, it should be quite easy and without hesitation to give back to the person that's been sharing most of this universal knowledge with us. But this is one of the things I picked up from this is, as he said, by not participating in the structure, whether you have a coin and you're in the structure or whatever, you're denying yourself an access to universal knowledge. So perhaps something in the game that's played, or just perhaps connecting, as he did in the last workshop, where he said, we connected you to the creator, where you can tap in. And perhaps this is that idea of being able to tap in on a more regular basis to the creator and the creator's energies to solve certain things, or to help do something that you wanted to do.
Okay, we're back again at the 613th Knowledge Seekers Workshop here. And as I mentioned before, because it's the second half, there will be an opportunity.
Feel free to stop it or make any comments, but this is the way all the developments, as I see it, of the Keshe Foundation are going to be brought through the One Nation Network until he's ready to reveal some of the secrets in producing cosmic ray materials and the rest. But I think he said these visitors are already, the 3i or the Swan R2, he said, was using a cosmic ray, but he also mentioned the 3i having some capabilities in this area as well, far beyond the man. But what will be, I think, part of the equalizer will be this network that'll bring us in touch with the creator, or to tap into that universal knowledge. You'll hear it here, I believe.
To ask questions. And I think Mr. Keshe will have a thing or two to say before we enter into that Q&A part. So please go ahead, Mr. Keshe.
Thank you very much. We are hoping by next 2 to 3 weeks, 2 weeks, to send out the first batches of these systems. Everything is getting ready for it. Hopefully, the people who are working in the background for the software are completed. Once you receive the units, try to connect it through Wi-Fi to your internet, or we are looking for a system registration, which means the unit can carry its own connection directly to a SIM card. This is not a cheap way to do it, but in a way you can take it anywhere, and the system is continuously connected. All you need, you pay a fee for a connection, it's a satellite connection or the system of the internet connection, and doesn't interfere with anything.
Anyone have an idea what is being said? You're going to put a SIM card into the One Nation network, and that's going to be connected to a satellite, and therefore you can take it anywhere with you. Is this what he's saying? Anyone familiar with SIM cards and the rest of this?
Well, I do use a SIM card in my router, and it has my data plan on it, but that's something that's going out of fashion. Mostly it's from fiber optics, or what other method they use from the towers, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure. I understand that the satellite, if they use satellites, I thought that we were trying to get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it'll be a progressive development, which means the unit can carry its own connection directly to a SIM card.
Which is connected to
a satellite. And therefore, he said you can take it anywhere, and the system is continuously connected. Okay.
And here, the satellite connections are fairly expensive, and it's not really, as far as I know,
Yeah,
up and running that
Yeah.
fully yet.
Just wondering what he means. I thought it was going to be at a certain location. Gail, could you handle your mic? I thought it was going to be, why would you need to take it to different places? I don't quite understand that. But anyway, maybe I'm not fully understanding this. But let's go back and hear what he said about it. But this is the way he said this is like a culmination of 50 years of work.
That
If you're in an area where you really need to keep it,
Go ahead.
then safety and security.
Absolutely.
So you may have to. They're not big.
Say again, you said you may have to.
Take them with you.
Okay.
So
I don't.
safety and
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
Like I travel with my travel trailer sometimes, or you know, when you're not home. Otherwise, you always have to be near your router. You plug into your router, or you have Wi-Fi from your router. But if you have a SIM card, I guess that then you don't have to have that connection.
Well, if
Make sense?
I have a unit and I'm using my cell phone to connect to it, I'm miles and miles away, I wouldn't be able to connect with it?
Sure, a cell phone's different from, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Just wondering.
Anyway, that's how I understand it.
Again, it's just a concept that they're putting out initially. But eventually, these will all be connected and powered by the cosmic ray antenna. This is the development. And through that development, the energy for power will be somehow work plasmatically through the One Nation network, probably through a certain power offer or an app in the store. But right now, it's fully gaming. This is the idea.
is a system on its own, not us. We have to negotiate to purchase. If any of you want to have that independent system, you can take it anywhere. It doesn't connect to your internet, cannot fall out, and you pay annual fee to the subscription to the what do you call the provider. On the other hand, once you confirm you received it, then we, within weeks, send you a second part to add to, just plug and play, that it connects it to our system, which means we cover, as I said before, the governments cover the satellites and the space above. Earth started from the ground. We cover the mankind from the ground with these units, which means all of us, we are connected to each other. And the system will cover everybody else in the mesh. We create a dome on this planet. And we try to be in as many nations as possible in the first 100 units. That at least there is one unit in every nation. Those of you in your countries could not buy one or receive one, could not afford it, we send you a unit because we have received donations to cover for this. As part of our system, those of you who've been generous to us have paid for the others to receive.
Remember, when he talks about creating a dome, he said this cosmic ray material and other things that he's using, he said they're creating cosmic ray materials all the time for different purposes and so on, would be used as a dome or a shielding. And remember Tom Salas, how he created that dome over his area of Dominica, and the storm came, yes, but he was in a way protected by the dome. As Mr. Keshe said, you need to allow the Earth to release the energies it needs to release and go where it needs to go. But we can create these domes to protect the inhabitants on the planet itself. So another reason to, in a way, get involved with this network here. It's not only the dome for peace, but also for protection from space objects or perhaps very violent storms. We just heard of the Jamaica getting hit with 225-mile-an-hour winds, and everything has gotten pretty much blown apart. My friend is there. And again, they went on vacation last week to Jamaica and I guess got caught in this. I haven't been able to make contact, but they said everything pretty much has been hit. So with that's probably billions of dollars, or maybe they want to create a 15-minute city out of it. But with that dome, that could have been, I don't know how much loss of life we haven't heard, or destruction of property and the rest, and the whole upheaval of the system. But this could have been handled with the dome. And of course, the Earth still gets to release its energy. It's just, it's not allowed to affect the structures or the people living under the dome, but it still releases its energy, which it has to do. So another reason to be part of the One Nation Network, perhaps, he didn't mention that, but he said the cosmic ray material was originally meant to create that shielding over nations for meteors or asteroids impacts.
And so in the first 100 units, we try to cover as many countries as possible. We have not received more or less any orders from Africa, but our knowledge seekers in Africa will send the unit, will give you the unit. The only part left with you is the what we call nations import duty, that if you can, we contact you before we send you, that if you can afford it, that we don't send it to you, that it gets stuck in the customs and everything else, you have to chase it. And if you have a continuous internet, this thing has to be continuously connected to internet. And then we test the first 100 for a month or two to see its capabilities, any problems, and then we start delivering on a continuous basis till we reach our 10,000 units. And please, when you receive the second part, just plug it in. Don't try to pick at it what it is. As I said, you lose what you came in for. These are very sensitive. They're built on a specific structure and has to stay that way. All you need to do is supply it with the power. And automatically connects to the Wi-Fi, and the people will set it up in the background. We have set things up to be able to deliver this, as man didn't come from the sky. Man doesn't fly all the time. Man is grounded, and 99.999% of us are always on the ground earth. Some of you live on the lower ground levels. Amsterdam, around that area, you're 10 meters, 20 meters. In some of the places, you're below ground. And some of you are on top of the mountains and the hills. So you cover each other very well. And so once you receive this, please understand that it's not yours. It belongs to humanity. It belongs to the rest of us to change us and the others to that dimension direction. This system transmits in their own way emotion of peace. And that's why we put it out. In their connection to our systems.
And that was an interesting point that Salamia had picked up on. She was wondering how these units emit that frequency or that the emotion of peace. So this is another one. If you're, as he said, you wanted peace, the peace is right on the table. So this will be sending out those pulses as well. So this is a multi. I mean, we saw the sun getting involved, the soul of the earth getting involved, visitors getting involved, systems from the Keshe Foundation, and they all seem to be matching and syncing together to bring about this whole process of the elevation of this planet. Maybe not in 1 second, but in a shorter period of time than we're probably used to. So it's a beautiful opportunity for you to participate, as he said, and gift it back to humanity.
We connect one of the systems to the system which continuously radiates what we call, you call it the frequency of peace, but in a way that we work with the soul of the man. So please be vigilant and be aware of receiving these things. If you live in any part of the third world, you can have a continuous internet and a continuous facilities to have access to internet, let us know, and we try to provide you with it. And at the same time, we will in the next few weeks open what we call the supporting site for those who want to have a yearly premium to one of the international organizations for a continuous Wi-Fi connection that never disconnects, because through these you will understand, we'll put a session, most probably 2 sessions, for you to learn how to use the system for its tokens and how to play the game of enlightenment. And in that process, for you to gradually learn how to use these systems.
So there's a little bit more to it, apparently, on how this whole structure works and how to use it, which he said we'll put a session or 2 sessions for you to learn how to use the systems for its token and how to play this game of enlightenment.
That is more or less what is set up for, and we take it from there. The session tomorrow, for those of you who are participants, will be a very interesting one, and I hope you will enjoy the session tomorrow. We're going to hammer you with joy and pleasure, and I hope you can tell us. We will take you into dimensions beyond your imagination, and in a way we're testing before the rest of you receive the packages of being tested on. If you need any help during the session, please let us know, and please be aware that in what dimensions and what position you as knowledge seekers tomorrow in the session of the October would like to be, and how to participate in it.
Okay, I just let that play through. That was about the last transmutation sessions, but here we're going to start again. We ask you, please, more donations. And then the amazing things is, and he hopes you'll be able to, and then sometime in the next year or so, I'll connect you, those of you who are the man of peace, to the universal systems, to these systems, to carry the message of peace through you, through your soul, to the rest of humanity. So another process is happening here. Let's just listen to Mr. Keshe explain.
Mr. Ask you, please, we need more donations to put more of these units across this planet, and we are doing our best to cover, spread, and be able to complete this job. And I hope you all succeed in being able to use it, enjoy it, and then sometime in the next year or so, I connect you, those of you who are the man of peace, through the universal systems, to these systems, to carry the message of peace through you, through your soul, to the rest of humanity. It's a very complicated job, but we need to spread at least a few thousand of these before we can do this. In a way, what I envisage that in a very near future, through the connections of knowledge seekers around the world, those of you who live near ocean, to be able to drop these units in the oceans of this planet, providing you a sealed, waterproof system.
Anyone want to ponder on why he wants these in the ocean? Would the fields not be available to those in the ocean, like the whales and the fish and the rest that need elevation unless we put it in there? Or is it part of that AI? Or even nuclear plants, perhaps, that use a lot of seawater sometimes, or other waters to cool themselves. Any thoughts on that? Okay, we continue.
Which can transmit, receive, and spread this, what we call the knowledge of creation into it. And let's see how far we can go and how we can develop this thing.
Yes, Alex, please.
Well, the world is covered mostly by water. And water has the same affinity as GANs. So the thing about the GANs is that it works on the emotional level. And it is very truthful to the soul. And so since there is a exchange of energy between the GANs and the water, it is a very natural connection. The important thing, of course, that to remember is that there's a physical water and a plasmatic water. And so the physical water that we drink, that the nature provides, is of a physical water. The water that constitutes our physicality is actually a plasma water. And that's why it's able to exchange energy with 73 trillion cells in the body. So I would say that that is probably the thing that is pushing us to basically look at increasing the quality and the quantity of the spreading of the knowledge, increasing the rate of change, if you will. And interestingly enough, although we know that the waters flow around the world, the plasma does not follow the currents. It follows the intentions of the people. And so it will make that connection the same way. So fundamentally and simply, we have a plasmatic water within our being. And by conveying that plasma energy to the waters, it allows the earth to have the same functionality with its waters.
So is this very similar to what we do on Sundays when we release GAN's waters? Now this system will continuously produce. And at one point he said the water is just a carrier of the fields, like a taxi. But Gianni explained to me that they definitely noticed something in the structure of the water was also changed.
Well, yes, of course it has changed.
Mr. Keshe was saying it's like a taxi. You know, when you're the field, so you take a taxi to go somewhere, but you get out of the taxi. You're not, the fields are not the taxi, but the water is the taxi and it carries the fields. That was just at one point. He explained something like that.
Well, the fields as we're transmitting them now are mainly through the atmosphere, and the water is more dense. It's of a lower energy state, and therefore, we kind of have to step down that energy. And we know that by using the GANs, we can pass on that energy to the water. And we all know that by drinking the water, we are accessing that energy. So I think this is the um, uh, line of logic that is being put forward. So I mean that's just a supposition on my part, but
Yeah, no, I think it's excellent. I mean, this idea will be as you said, the planet is three-quarters water. So if these units are in the ocean, that water with the fields is going to be really circulating all around us.
do you recall in Nigeria when Alex built a pool
Yes,
and people would go into the pool and then at some point in time they could go into the pool and actually the pool didn't even have to have water.
yep,
And that's one of the interesting things about the plasma. Like once the plasma enters a vessel, well, whether it's a jar or a bottle or a pool, the plasma energy is contained within that pool because there is a layer of GANS sensitive energy kind of putting on a coating on the inside of the vessel, and that has an affinity to exchange energy with whatever's in there. And the reason that we could participate so well, and this is true, what we found out with the gold production on May the 10th, that the reason that we could convert the uh, powder the GANS powder that we were seeing, which was black, and convert it into gold, is because we were actually contributing the extra energy that was needed to manifest it into that energy state. But that energy state was actually, although we took the black powder GANs and created a gold, that gold was at a lower energy state because we were absorbing that energy, and we had the capability of doing that because we are bags of GANs. And so when we look at the Earth and its capability, it is limited because of all the warmongering that's been going on and draining the energy of the planet. So the planet is actually supplementing a lot of the energy from the sun, and that's one of the things that's allowed the planet to endure. But every rotation of the Earth around the sun creates another layer of density, more gravitational. And we know this is true because from an archaeological standpoint, we know that the dinosaurs would not have been able to stand in this density, and we have never uncovered the bones of man next to the bones of the dinosaurs. So all the things that I learned in school about, how dinosaurs roamed this planet and we were scattering around like cockroaches, that was just a fairy tale.
so we may be literally swimming in the fields. I remember Mr. Kess telling a story at one time how a container on the ocean broke, and it had all these little yellow, tiny little ducks that you would float for a child's toy or something like that in the bathroom. And as the container broke open, he said they found these little chickens or ducks all over the planet, way up rivers and places you wouldn't expect them to be found. So the oceans will certainly move these fields. And as I said, we're literally going to be swimming in the fields. And then, of course, the dome above the soil.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. And it would be interesting to kind of do a study to see the behavior of the whales and all the other creatures that we have in our ocean here.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure who
Yeah,
do
he
that.
said they're going to upgrade the whole lot in one go, not only the man, but the animals as well, vertical and horizontal people, and all the entities on this planet. So, again, this is a huge knowledge to be able to develop this and actually implement it in a way, in
I
kind of
really
a
want to
hidden way. we know 5% of what the Keshe Foundation is doing. I think we know less than that in the actual knowledge of doing it. But again, that's just my way of looking at it.
Gail's comment reminded me of the story of Noah, and you know how he gathered up a pair of all the creatures on the planet, and you know, they said it was all the creatures, but you know, who knows? Uh, who was actually checking, you know, quality control? Hello, but I was wondering often about the fish because actually, really and truly, because of the Great Flood, he never had to worry about the fish, and so actually they may have not gotten the treatment at all that we got after the Great Flood. And so, yeah, that's true what Gail just said. You know, we now have a capability of extending it to the water people, if you will.
Okay. So again, as he said, we need to get moving in this dimension of energy, and I think this is part of the way. As you play this game and as you interact with this system, we need to learn how to interact with it more and more. Will bring an enlightenment and an elevation. And then, as he said, this is just an amazing part for in the coming time, in the next year or so, I'll connect those of you who are men of peace to the universal systems, to these systems, to carry the message of peace through you, through your soul, to the rest of humanity. How that's going to be done, I don't know. But again, the capabilities are just so far advanced. And we only know a small percentage of what's happening within the Keshe Foundation. So quite exciting times, and you're privileged to be even offered to be able to deliver this. Most people have no idea, or if they have an idea, they'd probably say this is just wishful thinking, or this guy's just trying to make some funds or something like that. But we have that deeper understanding and trust within the Keshe Foundation, and everything in the teaching seems to be coming forward now in a way, or parts of them are more confirmation of the teachings, as he said. So it's just amazing that we're privileged, or again, to be here, sitting here, contemplating most of this, where the rest of humanity has more, let's say, important things to deal with. Okay, shall we go to the teaching of today? Anyone want to make any comments or ask any questions? The teaching from the 614. Hopefully we have it here. Okay, is it? Yes, it is. Okay, we're just going to take this screen down. That's not what I'm exactly looking for, although I am looking for the transcript. We're going to go back to the beginning of 614. Since it's only 17 minutes, we're going to try and listen to the entire teaching, and please stop it if you can. Apparently, this is the 613. I'm just looking on my, we're going to have to bring up another, hopefully, copy of this. And I'll do that momentarily. Actually, did I bring it up? I thought I had it. And here it is. Okay. We're going to go to the teaching, and yes, it starts about 17 minutes. Ed had made a beautiful video about the intermediaries and the rest. And again, he wants us to be more confident within ourselves and our own understanding that no matter what, it can't be taken away from you because it's your understanding. And not
Series of
okay. Anyone want to make any comments? Hello, Claudia. Thank you for joining us. Anyone have any other thoughts or comments about how this process is sort of developing in a way before us? We haven't been given all the details. We've just probably been given more or less an overview about what's going to happen, and certainly not revealing how it's done. But you're offered, or we're making an offer, Keshe Foundation is making an offer to each one of us to take a part in delivering this One Nation network. I think Alex is going to be talking more about it. But this is part of the 614 is part of the new cycle of teaching, which is understanding and connecting to the Creator, as I understand it. Anyone have any thoughts? It was a rather short teaching. We'll try to go through it here before we get to the Dome of Peace, which we're even getting help with that, as I say, with these fields in the oceans and that water just moving across the planet through the nuclear systems and through the AI systems and any other cooling that may be needed. Again, the plasma doesn't harm, but it leads to elevation and enlightenment and balance. So maybe we'll even see systems running better than before. Perhaps nuclear accidents will become less as the system sort of somehow gets embedded with certain knowledges to keep it in balance. Perhaps. Mr. Keshe is not giving us all the clues, but he is giving us some of the clues.
Ongoing workshops. And once again, we have the honor of having Mr. Mayran Keshe as our main presenter here today. So I think he is ready to go, and we'll enter into today's presentation. Please go ahead, Mr. Keshe.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good day to you. As usual, wherever and whenever you listen to this series of knowledge seekers from Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute, we welcome you back. And as promised, we start a new cycle of teaching. The reason for the new teaching, new information, or whatever connects to the past is that mankind is getting ready for that emergence of the universal community. We have no choice. The time is certain. Hopefully, we need to know more. Otherwise, these people, as we see today, all our NASA scientists and space scientists are baffled by how one of these objects or both of them are behaving, but understanding the plasma technology, that's exactly how they should behave. So, if somebody comes out of any of these spaceships and say is God, half of humanity will bend backwards and pray and kiss his foot. But if you understand the technology, you understand most of the human race is a step ahead of, because as I said before, they're still in the spaceship where we are teaching, we're developing the transmutation of the soul as a man. What is important, and I think we should have covered this at the very beginning of the teaching some 10, 15 years ago, but mankind wasn't ready for it, is to understand what is God.
Anyone want to give their current impression about what is God? From whatever way you've been seeing God? A big guy on a big throne, or that's the way I had envisioned it as a child and growing up and so on? Okay.
What do we call creator? And how does the universe of us works within him, by him, and through operation of the what we call the rest of the universe? One of the most important things for us as knowledge seekers has to be, and comes to be, is to understand what is this, what we call creator, is made of.
And I remember him saying at one point in time that the Creator is small, weak, and a giver. And then I think of those fields below Pico, which Alex often mentions, and even below the next step below Pico. Is this where the Creator lives? As Mr. Keshe said, we go for the bigger and the stronger, but he goes for the smaller and the weaker. Is this where the creation sits, in these smaller and weaker fields, but still have the ability to give. Just my thinking. Any comments?
It goes back to understanding of the totality of the structure of the work and how us as a human race, which are so materialistic, can understand this and bring to us, for us, a dimension of what we call connection. What would it be, and how will it be, and how does it operate? I have to answer a call. If you can wait 1 second, please. I'll come back.
Anyone want to explain a dimension of what we call connection, which is so materialistic, can understand this and bring to us, for us, a dimension of what we call connection? Isn't this what he's been saying? We're connecting you to universal energies. We're connecting you to the Creator. This One Nation network will connect you in a way to that enlightenment game where you teach yourself to be peaceful. Plus the interaction of the knowledge on the energy dimension. This is another beautiful facet of the One Nation network. And as he said, if you don't get involved in it, you deprive yourself of the knowledge. We're just waiting for Mr. Keshe to come back here. It's sort of playing. I think Rick is going to tell us about the background here. Mr. Keshe will be back momentarily. We still got a volume? Yes. It's still running? Yes.
Our background image here today is from the products of the Keshe Foundation that are being offered as part of the Halloween package. And you can still order, but it'll be for next year at this point. Hello, Mr. Keshe, are you back?
I'm back, yes. Sorry, that was the important call I had to accept. We've been waiting for it. Yeah, the Cosmic Ray bundle is, what do you call it? The Halloween is the last pack went out yesterday, as far as I know. And we're getting ready for the New Year pack. It will be out by the 11th of December, the latest, and whatever it is there and what we need to do with it. And what we need to, what we call, deliver according to what we have. Let me quiet down this thing. Our Zoom does what it likes. I cannot disconnect this house. Just 1 second.
What Alex was saying about the Zoom.
Why do we have a problem with Zoom all the time?
But at the same time,
okay, we're going. What is important for us is to understand what we are dealing with, and most probably in the coming time, when we come to understand, when we see our what we call space brethren, the people who are on their way to us, they might land here this year, they might land in next year, 100 years from now, but
okay, so you see how he gives? He said next year, 100 years from now, next week, we don't know. but we're getting prepared for that interaction in a way.
We have put a beacon out. We're telling everybody what we are doing. Now we become so clever that our beacons are on satellites and the rest of it. So we are making a lot of noise in the space where man did not used to. It was just shouting and howling and maybe drumming. And a few kilometers would have gone. Now we are drumming to the universe.
And as he said, some of his teachings are the reason that the universal community has become curious and how we gain that aspect. But at the same time, he said this group, or the 3I at least, is a regular visitor on a 3,000-year cruise. So he again puts it in a way differently.
Our satellites, our spaceships, we are intruding in every dimension and every possible way. And we come to see, as I said, the biggest problem for mankind will be that anyone claims to be the God or the prophet of space. And human race falls for it. Because they can do magics that they couldn't do, so they know more. What is important for?
So some humans are gonna fall for this. What are they gonna pronounce themselves as gods or something, or universal magicians, and go about it this way? It would think they would take a different way, or is it humanity that's going to promote them?
For us is to understand the truth about our own creator, to analyze how it works, how it creates, how it manifests, and how this thing exists. If we look at it, we call this a plasma, for example. This is what is as the entity of the creator. At the point of conception, it's nothing but energies. Magnetic fields are created out of the energies, not energies out of magnetic fields. So if our creator makes a ripple in shape or another, these ripples will become interacting, will become pressurizing each other, and lead to creation of magnetic fields. Mankind has not understood this, and
So
that's why we are in problem in a lot of that.
Go right ahead.
So in a sense, which one comes first? If magnetic fields are made out of energy, and energy is magnetic fields in motion, so which one comes first?
Anyone would you like to hear that again?
I thought he said the first, when you look at the conception, it's the pure gel of energy. And something, I think you said before, something cause movement. And in that energy, after things are being pushed around, then I forget what he called the little pieces, then they start to interact, and then the fields come. And they're the field of energy. But what makes it?
I understand, the part that the entity of the creator. So the way I look at it is the entity of creator means that's the outcome of a process. And then he drew the shape of the entity of the creator. So if the entity of the creator is there, and then fields started interacting, remember he called the entity of the creator the energy. So does it mean that the energy is the first, then fields start interacting within that space.
That's what I thought I heard.
Then
He said
how? And then the next person it becomes who
the
created
creator.
the. Go ahead.
I'm saying the creator of the creator must be shaking that gel, or something must be happening that causes the movement.
Right. There has to be the creator of the creator. What created that entity of the creator?
Right.
So we're
Maybe
one day.
like when you want a piece of bread, or you think you want a piece of bread, that starts a ripple effect and creates the magnetic fields to get your structure moving to go to the location where the bread is. So the ripple starts with the thought. Just adding my bit there. And that creates those fields, which gets the body in motion in a way. But it starts with the idea, I want bread.
Again, the question goes back to which one comes first. It's like, you know how we call the chicken and egg that comes first? Energy is there as an entity, and then the magnetic fields is interacting within it. And he says energy doesn't come out of magnetic fields. Magnetic fields comes out of the energy.
Right.
So in a sense, was it the energy that came first? But then how was the energy there in the first place? Who gave that entity to be there?
Well, how about like the wish? What is the wish created out of? You want something or want to achieve something, so you make a wish. And
Yeah, so it feels. Yeah, definitely feels. Your wish feels give birth to the fulfillment of the wish.
that starts
So
magnetic fields in motion.
yeah, but then he said that magnetic fields in motion comes out of energy.
Correct.
But if you understand the definition of energy is magnetic fields in motion.
Well, to me, that thought is an energy. But let's hear it again. I backed it up a minute. See if we can follow the transcript here.
Kilometers would have gone. Now we are drawing to the universe. Our satellites, our spaceships, we are intruding in every dimension and every possible way. And we come to see, as I said, the biggest problem for mankind will be that anyone claims to be the God or the prophet of space. And human race falls for it. Because they can do magics that they couldn't do, so they know more. What is important for us is to understand the truth about our own creator, to analyze how it works, how it creates, how it manifests, and how this thing exists. If we look at it, we call this a plasma, for example. This is what is as the entity of the creator. At the point of conception, it's nothing but energies. Magnetic fields are created out of the energies.
So initially, it is energies. Like rays. Can we call them rays? Or fields? Remember, the rays, then the fields, and then the fields create a plasma.
I think
not energies out of magnetic field.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'll back it up. Yes. Go ahead, Alex.
I think we have to say that and the energy is the currency of life, and everything else that we're looking at is either a vessel to bring things, or it is a destination where things arrive. So the essence of life, and it all boils down to the fact that life wants to live, and that is the fundamental instigator of this energy. So we are at the crossroads now where we really have to truly, define, for our purposes, what the creator is, and what life is, and what it all means. And the way we have been brought up in our society, this is a very fearful subject because it takes away the so-called grounding that we have, which has been a real comfort zone for us.
Uh, Alex, sorry.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's scary when you confidently argue to someone that energy is God, because that's what it is. Energy is the creator. Energy is also fields. So, in a sense, definition of energy from plasma is magnetic fields in motion. But magnetic fields came out of energy. And Mr. Keshe is now telling us that to understand what is the creator, we have to understand that the plasma gave birth to the entity, and he drew a shape. That entity is energy. And from that energy, the interaction of the magnetic fields came about. So when you say to anyone, hey, the creator is everywhere. The creator is the fields. The creator is environment. The creator is energy. So that's exactly how scary it would be to anyone that has, oh, damn, this dog would be your creator. This uh, animal could be your creator because it's the essence. So the question I was asking, which one comes first? There's no answer to it. Going by what you said, it is scary because everywhere is God. It's like the air we breathe is all God. It's all the essence. That's my understanding.
At the
Sorry
point
to
of
interrupt you.
conception, it's nothing but energies. Magnetic fields are created out of the energies, not energies out of the magnetic field. So that our creator makes a ripple in shape or another. These ripples will become interacting, become pressurizing each other, and leads to creation of magnetic fields.
Yeah, but you still have to connect it to the knowledge that we already have in terms of definitions of how plasma works. So
don't worry, this is just the first teaching or one of the earlier teachings in this new cycle of teaching. So there'll be more.
The key word on this page is manifests. So we see the manifestation on this planet through physical means, and we ignore the manifestation through other means. And we have been discussing for many years now the manifestation of our existence in the plasma field, and how that field is manifesting in our physicality. So the first step of the understanding is to understand it is from the top down. And when I say from the top, I'm talking from the higher energy state to the lower energy state. And our existence in terms of physicality is at that lower state. So if we're going to take the elevator up, there is really as far as I can see, no boundary on the upness. It's just like saying, how big is large, and what is the highest note on the music scale, or what is the loudest sound. And we haven't hit that limit. And so in terms of understanding the manifestation, that too has no limits. And so this is what we're doing. We're transcending the limitations of our knowledge. And I think that is the key word that Mr. Keshe has used in here, how it creates and how it manifests, and everything else therefrom is a manifestation. But that manifestation comes in different packages.
All right, let's continue. Anyone else? Feel free.
Oh, I just want
This
to
is
make a
what
comment.
it
Go right ahead.
I just want to make a comment that, this is a brilliant conversation because, instead of coming away, scratching our heads and say, well, what are we talking about? Well, we can't talk about things that are beyond our knowledge. But the thing is that we have to acknowledge our existence. So, if you're not willing to accept your existence, then, you're not really seeking any knowledge to explain that. And so, we end up being drifters. And when we look at the what science calls outer space, which is the in-between space between everything, we know that the PM ticks are floating everywhere. So when we're looking at it and say, well, there's nothing in space, but we have measured the PM ticks everywhere. So we, first of all, can't ask the question, where are these coming from? Because we don't even acknowledge their existence. We just say, oh, well, there's nothing out there. And we have lived with that all of our lives. And then now we're coming to the grips that that energy is there, and that nothing is nothing. Something is always something as opposed to being something else. That's all. And so the energy needs to be exchanged. And if that energy needs to be exchanged, then the manifestations also need to change along with the different energy states. So I'm not saying that we've come up with the definitive answers. What I'm saying is that we are now in the process of acknowledging our existence and trying to find that explanation, but from our physical point of view at this point in time. Thanks,
So,
everybody.
so Alex, so then environments could be the creator.
Yeah, well, can you envision yourself in that environment?
To exist, it's like you are inside and you don't know how large that environment is. And that environment becomes, you have everything that you need from that environment. So that's, in a sense, your creator. So to envision in terms of scale-wise, it's all depend on how you can accommodate your thoughts,
There you go.
because
Beautiful.
you don't know where you are.
I love it. That's great.
These are not questions you can ask at your local parish because they don't understand it themselves. They say, "Oh, son, you just have to trust God. This knowledge is, very only God knows these things." Mr. Keshe is starting to reveal some of these deeper secrets.
But he already did. I mean, we already know that he confirms his existence with all of creation. So he wouldn't exist he wouldn't confirm his existence if it wasn't for all of the energy that connects and makes plasmas and does everything else. So every single thing, every planet, every galaxy, everything is the creator. So
Absolutely.
He must be very happy about it. He's confirming his existence. That's what I feel.
Yes.
And just imagine an entity that can experience everything that's going on in a way simultaneously out of all this creation. I mean, we just have this little speck of dust here with trillions of emotions and everything else, and the creator gets to experience all of it, not only this little speck, but across the universe. So this is quite a complex and again, just far reaching that an entity could experience all this plasmatically simultaneously.
Again,
Yeah.
our existence is the confirmation. So by mere existing, we are confirming that the creator is here.
And I made you like me. All right, let's go back to it for
Yes.
more.
As the entity of the creator. At the point of conception, it's nothing but energies. Magnetic fields are created out of the energies, not energies out of magnetic fields. So if our creator makes a ripple in shape or another, these ripples will become interacting, will become pressurizing each other, and lead to creation of magnetic fields. Mankind has not understood this, and that's why we are in problem in a lot of directions and dimensions in space technology and others. Magnetic fields are created out of the motion of the energies of the universe, and not magnetic field creating the energy of the universe. Once we understand this, we see the creator decides, let's say, to move a plasma muscle here. It leads to creation of a magnetic field. It's a ripple effect. It's literally, as I explained once before, it's like being an ocean. Calm, no movement, flat water. And then suddenly something ripples, something moves. And what do we see? We see waves establishing on the what we call the surface of the ocean.
So what are these ripples he's talking about? What are these muscles he's talking about? He used the term ripples and muscles when the creator decides to move. To move a plasma muscle here, it leads to the creation of a magnetic field.
When you saw field interaction, it's all give and take. That's the characteristics of plasma. They give and they take. We call it different names. So when there are ripples, that's give and take.
Okay. Anyone else?
Was it you, Mark, who said that Dr. Gatwa introduced about 40 different words?
Yes.
Okay, so, our history shows, reference to the chariots of the gods. And to me, a chariot is something that a horse pulls, and a cart on wheels.
Just a moment. I'm going to mute a mic here. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, when you say chariot, I'm thinking of the movies where there's a horse, drawing
Yes.
a chariot, a two-wheeled cart that the guy sits on and flails his weapons around, and yet if they're talking about the chariots of the gods, it envisions for me that this chariot would actually lift off the ground and kind of float in the sky, and the horse would have to float with it.
Well, it certainly saved the horse a lot of work and effort.
Well, you wonder if the flame coming out is from the methane gas.
Okay, we continue on. But again, asking all of these questions that mankind has asked themselves, again, one of them, are we alone in the universe? This may be the first time we have that interaction to find out.
These waves or the magnetic fields.
It's actually,
Go right ahead.
no, I was thinking about the are we alone? The fact that the knowledge that we're not alone, or that we're alone, both sides are scary. If the vastness of the universe and then you figure that you're alone, that's scary. That's boring. And then the thing that's okay, you're not alone, it's still scary and you don't know who's there. So in a sense, either both ways is scary. But now when you understand that the environment, the God is everywhere, then that gives you the comfort to know that anywhere you are, you're the last man standing. It's okay that you're not alone.
Okay.
See, that's a great point that I brought up because this is we're just after Halloween, and there's a lot of talk about ghouls, ghosts, and goblins, and how scary they are, and a lot of people are afraid of ghosts. And it's not that the ghosts are scary, it's the notion that I just brought up, the uncertainty that goes along with it. So that causes a kind of fear. But no one has ever been hurt by a ghost, ever. The only reason that a person might get hurt is because they took a step back in fear and then fell down and tripped over a log or rolled down the stairs as they were trying to run away in a clumsy fashion. The ghosts had nothing to do with it. The ghosts were just looking at you and saying, "Well, I'm having difficulty figuring out why I'm here and what you're doing here, and you're running away from me as if I'm attacking you." So, it's our interpretation of the action, but the ghost does not have a capability of punching you or hitting you or anything else because they're not tangible in the physicality.
So you say. Energies can move things. I believe we've heard many stories, but we'll save that for another discussion. All right, let's just finish this.
And the liquid of the ocean is the plasma of the Creator. Once we understand this, then we come to understand more and more how these waves interact with each other, and interaction of this one with the other one creates inertia, and this one with this one creates life. And once we understand this, the whole dimension of magic goes out of it. It's a logical, it's a system, but the only difference is we call it oceans to be big. The ocean of the plasma of the Creator is a universe. So if you understand this, we come to understand sometimes when one of these things by accident touches something, another field of the other one, it creates inertia. So when inertia, depending on its strength or whatever, leads to creation of stars. And then the same way with the magnetic field of the rest. What we will see, which is now shocking the world of physics with the 3I, and now R2 has entered the scene very heavily, is that we have not, our scientists have not understood how inertia is created. What inertia is, we just call it inertia. We just call it the gravity. But knowledge, because you understand exactly what it means and exactly what it brings. Then it comes to the position of the interaction of the fields of the environment anywhere in this galaxies of the creation of the Creator, and this leads to creation of life. the life which is connected to the life of the universe and is not localized has two characteristics in it. One, contains hydrogen or elements of the hydrogen singularity and dimension of the carbon. The other two are local industries attach themselves, and then you have other things like calcium and others attach themselves for this cell to operate. So our creator, the plasma of the creation, has a sense of giving and a sense of pulling. Pull is only effective if it is heavier, which is the carbon-14. Pull, dissipation is if it's thin enough to go with the other, which is magnetical. And if we observe this, we see our creator is just a huge gel of energy. And everything else is created by the interaction of the fields of it.
You want to say anything about this jelly, Gail? I think she brought
So
it.
much to unpack.
What did you say about Joe?
Did you want to say anything about this gel? You had mentioned something earlier.
That's the way he started it off. In a way, it's sort of like saying it's a big blob, but pure energy.
How dare you
Gel?
call our creator a blob?
Oh, it's not nice. Okay, it's a huge gel of energy, yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
I was taught about concrete, and one of the things I noticed about concrete is that it grew, and so therefore it had a sentience. But scientifically speaking, there's a question, you know, when you create concrete, you start with a powder and add water, and it creates a cement, and that cement hardens, and then it makes concrete, which is pretty hard. But scientifically speaking, that hard material was a gel. And when I heard the word gel, you know, I think of a jelly. And, you know, I don't understand how I could fall down in a jelly and scrape my knee. But you certainly could if you fell down riding a bike and fell down on the concrete, you would scrape your knee. So how does that work as a gel? And if the concrete itself is a gel, and if the concrete itself grows, and if the concrete has a sentience, in other words, an empathy for the environment, then that word is very appropriate. And then by extension, you know, we can all come up with an answer as to how the energy in motion is entrained within the gel
Alex,
structure.
you're not talking about thermal expansion and contraction, are you?
No, not at all. I'm literally talking about growth.
That is very hard to conceptualize in a way, that a cement could actually have that sort of capability, but I think you've documented it more than one time.
Well, scientific community, you know, it is a confirmation that it is confirmed that concrete is a gel in the gel structure, and yet, you know, in some cases we could accept the technology, and in other cases we are resentful of the technology. So now it all boils down to the terminology and how you use that terminology in the proper context. So if we're talking about energy as a gel and looking at the concrete as a converter of that energy, then because concrete grows and we call it curing, right? It takes an engineer will tell you, well, it takes 7 days to cure concrete, and they like it to cure for 28 days, and then they have curing agents which speed it up. But the reality was that concrete continues to cure indefinitely, and it will activate in the presence of water. And so we know that water is a solvent of life on this planet. And so it only stands to reason that if concrete as a sentient being is emulating the life tendencies of growth, that it does so in the presence of water. Back to you, sir.
Okay, let's just finish this up. I think we have just maybe 10 minutes more.
And if you understand how to play, you can go through the center of stars. If you can play and create the right fields, you can sit on the surface of the sun and don't get burned, and the rest of it. And this is where we have to understand. And this is where the time comes into play, the fields comes into play, and the soul comes into play, and the essence of the creation. So, in a way, you get a pot of jelly and put it on the table, and every now and then shake it. You see different ripples, different things, and everywhere, and you see lines and collection of lines and the rest of it, and it's exactly what happens to our Creator. He doesn't have bone, he doesn't have a skull, he does not possess eyes, but through the vibration of the fields of the energy, what we call creation magnetic field, it gives access to the whole knowledge of what's going on. He's top, he sits on the top, then he knows what the man is up to as much as the others in the universe. The most important thing for our scientists and the knowledge seekers and the people who come in is to watch what the new contacts with the universal community tries to teach man. That the man will not get fooled to fall for what is a natural process. They have huge power over magnetic fields. They can create huge shielding, which we know the technology, and we understand the technology. And our wish is that by the end of this year, man does not start another cycle of creation on Earth, as we've seen with the pyramids, where the knowledge was buried, the knowledge is there, and those of who were there became passengers of the universe because they were, in a way, lured to this beauty of what they have they couldn't understand. Human race now understand most of this and cannot be fooled by magics and powers and the rest of it.
So is he saying here that the Egyptians got lured away by this beauty of what they saw they couldn't understand? And they became passengers of those of who were there became passengers of universe.
Remember Mr. Keshe talking about the purse and the hieroglyphs and everything had people carrying the purse. And he said they used that in the universe when they were traveling. So that tells you that they weren't just here on the earth or near the pyramids. They were passengers of the universe.
And maybe these stories will get revealed as well in coming times. What happened? How did that whole pyramidal structure sort of stop functioning? Someone was saying it was for wellness, it was for feeding, it was for other things, energy. It was emitting, but again, I don't know. That's just what I had heard.
The biggest problem for our world of science and technology and the governing bodies of this planet is how to digest maybe this encounter with 3I or 2R and the future passengers of the universe. If we show we are naive, we don't understand, we'll be more or less abused and treated like not only a third-class citizen of the space, as ignorance, and does not matter what you're trying to teach about the dimension of the soul, because you don't have something physical, you cannot be trusted. Typical European attitude. Show me, I believe it, because when you show me, I can cheat you and take it from you and becomes mine. And show me to believe is for me to believe. I don't need to show. So, as knowledge seekers, now you understand where you came from. You are within a jelly of magnetic fields created by the interaction of the energies of the Creator. But this system has always a basic fields, which is the carbon, and is the hydrogen or single atom, fundamental atom, and a combination of it, because it's carbon-14, the 6 sides to connect and 7 sides to emit or anchor to. And once man understands, the magicians of the universe cannot do much, because we understand you have come with the technique. That's good, but
Can we
what
stop
about
it?
us? The biggest
I want to ask what his opinion is. Alex, they're talking 6 sides to connect and a 7th side to emit or anchor to.
I knew you were going to ask that.
Okay, thanks.
Well, it certainly changes the relationship of the pentagon and the hexagon, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Well, the hexagon is still there, right? That's the 6-sided.
Yeah, that's representative of our life on this planet. Okay. I was doing a teaching quite a while ago, and then the part about the pentagon is that the pentagon structure represents an angular structure, and each side is different from another side. There are 5 sides. Each side is different by the same angle. That angle is different from the structure of the 6 sides in terms of the number of sides and the angle. But the sides are common. You can have a commonality between a 5-sided pentagon and a 6-sided hexagon, but the angle between the sides is different. And the thing about the pentagon is that it is able to maintain that conformity without having all 5 sides present. So if you were taking a pentagon and flipping it on an axis, and almost any axis, it would be symmetric. But if you were to remove one side, so it would still have the conformity of the pentagon, but say have 4 sides, or 3 sides, or 2 sides, the polar flipping would represent an on and off switch, just like a computer, a 0 and a 1. And it is this polar flipping that all the cells do to convert energy into that hexagonal format, which is common to our carbon structure. That's why we are organic, because carbon is 6, is a hexagon. But then when we get into carbon 14, that is a septagon. And we never talk about that. We never talk about that in terms of metabolism or in the mitochondrial reaction. But we do talk about the amino acid. And what we talk about is aerobic and anaerobic. And we talk about hydrogen as an energy, and carbon as the structure. And we're always looking for that cure for cancer, ignoring the fact that our atmosphere is 79% nitrogen. and nitrogen is 14. So it has an affinity with carbon 14. And this is what we've been talking about by going into the interaction with isotopes. So yeah, great question, Gail. Thank you.
Randy, anything you want to say? I remember him talking about 5-sided and 6-sided, but I don't remember the 7th side to emit or anchor to. Randy says if you take any GANs and put it in a 400 mesh filter, all the water in time will drip out, leaving you with an almost a gel substance. All right, let's finish this.
When I make my GAN substances, I always put it through a mesh filter to take any metals out to come off. So I tried a 400 mesh filter. The GANs would not go through, only the water, no matter how many times you scrape the side. So I left it there for a few days, and it was almost like a jelly-like substance. And if you keep leaving it, you put it on the dish and you put it in the sun, then it'll totally dry out to a powder.
Yeah, we certainly have a lot to understand about this whole process, but we're certainly laying the base level, I would say, and more. As he said, we're not going to be fooled. At least the knowledge seekers, it sounds like, will not be fooled. Maybe some will be. I don't know. But I don't know how they're going to couch themselves as the magicians of the universe. At least with us, that's not going to sit too well. And why would they perpetrate that anyway? He said if we're naive, we're going to be treated as third-class citizens. Just something doesn't jive there, but I'm sure it's consistent. I'm just not understanding what is being said.
Mankind will face, if we go through the encounter, which is now set up to be around the end of this year, we think if they don't change their position and dimension and fields, will bring a lot of disaster for man, because now become electronics, we become everything else computerized, and the weakness in this is magnetic fields. If you carry a credit card with a chip on it, they just put a bit on it and they read your chip and they empty your account. But if you know how to have bags or purses, you just put it in there, they can't do anything. And we have to become that way. We have to understand that cannot be cheated. And for sure, our governance will do that.
And that's what he said at one of the conclusions of a previous workshop, where he said we have to be able to protect ourselves from any harm and interaction with this system. Again, I don't know if he's mentioning the craft, was mentioning humanity as a whole, us as individuals, but apparently we may need some sort of, like those Faraday bags, as he said, you can put certain things in there and they're blocked from any interaction of fields.
Starting from the presidents and the rest, they've been lured by the gold and everything else, which is meaningless to anything else, but they get their way done. This is what and where mankind has to become very clear. Understanding the truth about one's own creation. That we are part of the magnetic field of the universe we live in, which has come from the movement of the energy of the embodiment of the Creator. Now you understand why for years I tell you energy is magnetic fields in motion. That was taught for years because of what you explained today. What we explain, how this sits, explains, and you understand how you can speed it up, how you can reduce it, how you can use the energies of the universe to the advantage of yourself without doing anything, by knowing when to tap, and how to live. This is opposite and against all the teaching of scientific world of today, because we've been pushed to accept the nonsense of the matter energy by the energy of the matter, and it does not fit. So, as we start this cycle of teaching, we speak about the fields of the Creator, energies of the Creator, which lead to creation of the magnetic field, which lead to creation of you, me, the mountains, the stars, the galaxies, and the rest. Think on what I explained today, because this is the breaking point where you lot have to start moving. Not me. I have moved a long time ago. To understand the process of physicality, to understand the process of energy, and to understand when one goes to the other and back, and understand the source of your creation is your Creator. So you don't need to tap into the sun. You can tap in the dimension of the plasma of the soul of the Creator, and all of you today in this session are receiving it. It's free. We have set up our systems that you absorb it. It's you that has to start changing and bringing peace to yourself and to your environment, and understanding how you can absorb energy. In today's session, we are syncing you with the energy of the universe. Let's see what you come out with and how you understand the process of the creation. Understand one thing. Your Creator does not have a bone and a skull. He has love, energy, which in transfer of the energy becomes the magnetic field that by resisting and interacting becomes the body of the man. You call it frequency. Once you understand this, we are halfway through understanding that our friends of space, if they turn up on the 19th, 20th of December, don't bring us any surprises, but you will see mankind will be surprised. They have very advanced technology, but not advanced as the knowledge seekers who understand how to use the soul of the man. They're here to learn that, and it's your job to teach it. We stop the teaching today and answer you some of the questions. Until next week, I'm extremely sick. I try not to cancel, but to be here as a respect and honor for all of you. So we try to answer a few questions, and we'll curtail the teaching of today, and we come back together next week.
Okay, so he certainly doesn't want us to be fooled by any magicians or people who have advanced knowledge, as we sort of have a leg up in a way and understand who the Creator is and that we're made in the image of the Creator. And this is, again, just understanding that process. But he said we're going to teach them the transmutation. Maybe something's going to click in the next period of time where we all start to pick up on this and have confidence in this transmutation dimension and be able to teach it to the others as they teach us some of the advanced magic in the, or advanced technology in the matter state, or even cosmic rays. He said they're going to manifest and transmute into a physicality. So they must have some sort of knowledge that's a bit advanced for us, but we understand it's not magic, and hopefully none of us will be fooled by it, although it does sound like humanity or even the governments. Maybe they'll shower them with gold and this will be the way, and we'll hitch our wagons to your wagon and follow you anywhere in the universe because you can create the gold or something. I don't know, but we're soon to find out more and more. Okay, I think it's time to go to the Dome of Peace. We've been a little bit long, but a lot of great interactions. Thank you. All right, so we'll go to the first step of the Dome of Peace. And as we've heard, units in the ocean will certainly create fields. And this maybe will, but although we did say we'd continue until we reach a permanent feature of life on the permanent peaceful feature of life on this planet. And maybe these systems in the ocean will help that to occur in a shorter time. I know we've been putting GANs, waters in the Chinese have been doing it for a decade or more, probably more. And we've been doing that, and this is the first step of creating that dome of peace. But now perhaps those GANs we release will become part of this bigger structure that he's talking about with the oceans and energizing them to a different level. I don't know what he has planned, but certainly this is the first step and something for our physicality to do, and that's releasing GANs waters, which you can do at different parts of the day on Sunday, but you can do it any time. And of course, the Brazilians have been instrumental in this. We used to see a lot of spraying and certain things, but you can release GANs waters anytime, but collectively we're doing it on Sundays. So you can join us at 12 or 6 p.m. and just release some GANs waters in the way you choose to do it, whether it's just on the ground or down your drain or perhaps in a lake near you or right into a river that runs into the ocean, as it all gets mixed. And again, something for our physicality to do, but the GANs water seems to know where to go and what to do. It carries a level of intelligence, and its objective is to bring balance into situations. So again, we've been doing this, and I think we'll see more of it with these units that get put in the oceans in a way, if you can imagine that. So let's hear from Stefania. Just going to put the volume here. Good.
I will look for it. I don't know if anyone want to read this demo piece. Anyone want to offer?
I will
With a nice
read it
voice.
for you.
Okay. Okay.
This is what came in and what is now become a pattern. This is from a guy, I don't know him, but he says, please remember this Sunday and every Sunday from now on, till we raise the soul of this planet to a peaceful planet. Keshe Foundation knowledge seekers worldwide will spread the GANs waters around the world at 12 p.m. Central European Time and or 18 p.m. Central European Time every Sunday at the same time as they choose which time to suit them. Thank you for participating in this greatest movement by the soul of the man to bring about the peace on this planet as the permanent feature of the life of this planet.
Again, I think you can use any sort of GANs water you'd like. Sometimes you can add a little bit of GANs to it. I think Mr. Keshe said he likes the CO2 and the zinc with a little bit of GANs added to it and then release it, whether it's in your windshield washer or again in the drain or however you want to release it. And again, something for the physicality to do, and you can find out how to make GANs on the Keshe Foundation Wiki website, or ask one of the other knowledge seekers. Very simple process, converting fields into something that appears as a solid in the matter state we call GANs. It's a state of energy between the matter state, as I understand it, and the plasma state. So it sort of has its special category. But again, we can play with this and learn more about the movement of energies. All right, so we'll go to the second step of the Dome of Peace. This is where we use our own sort of reactors, our energies, our emotions to elevate the others. In the same way the GANs does it in the, it's something for the physicality to do. This is something, again, for our souls to do in a way. Physicality not involved in this process. As I understand it, he said you can be hiking, climbing a mountain, doing any sort of other work, and at the same time participate in this process. And of course, you're invited every day at 9 o'clock to participate again until we reach that permanent peaceful position. And also on Wednesdays, the Brazilian team has a special intention at 6 p.m. To bring the change, and this is an actual physical meeting. When we meet on the energy dimension at 9 p.m., and I'll just show that very quickly. And this is where we sort of create that bouquet of energies, again, on the plasmatic level through our emotions. And you're invited every day to participate in this process. And the beauty of it is nobody fails this test. So if you feel you're not worthy or you feel you can't do it, you can do it. It's all what you want to give. You can spend 1 nanosecond or you can spend a few minutes, whatever you'd like. And then as we hear, instead of it doing once a time, do it all the time and pulse these world leaders. That their soul picks up a certain dimension of peace and other things and incorporates that into their physicality. So you're all invited. And again, this process will continue. We'll see how these units in the ocean, but that hasn't even come yet. That's probably in a few months. So we're going to continue to release GANS waters. We're going to continue to join collectively and work on that energy dimension to bring about the change, again, through the wish. So you can join the Brazilians in this beautiful intention, or you can join the Universal Council for their intentions. And again, let's just hear from Sweta, if we can here.
I'll read this beautiful presentation of Dome of Peace. And the Dome of Peace is already here. All the knowledge seekers, truth seekers, lovers of humanity has built in a way, spreading the GANs, loving each other as shareholders. So I will read this as please remember, every Sunday from now on until we raise the soul of this planet to a peaceful planet, Keshe Foundation knowledge seekers worldwide will spread the GANs waters around the world at 12 p.m. CET and or at 18 p.m. CET every Sunday at the same time, as they choose which time to suit them. Thank you for the participation in this greatest movement by the soul of man to bring about the peace on this planet as a permanent feature of the life of this planet. Mr. Keshe suggests we add the next step to create the Dome of Peace with power of the souls, as we have already going through this with the 2 eyes. And we ask you to spread the GANs waters each Sunday. Now we give you a new path. Now try to unite each other's souls. Try to elevate the souls of humanity, soul of humanity, through your own soul to a level that no one can touch, the embodiment of the human race. So beautiful. Choose a time where all of you come together on the soul level in a state of inner calmness. At that time, don't spread the water of GANs, but spread your soul. Unite, and in time, we will make a new race out of the soul of man. And then, instead of doing it once a week, do it all the time. MT Keshe.
Okay, so we all know what the mission is, and you can pulse the world leaders as early and as often as you'd like. And this will be a continued process until we reach that permanent peaceful position on this planet. So again, you can do it right now for a second, or you can continue as I've been doing. You can do it at the same time as you're looking at the program. Again, the physicality is not involved in the second step, although the physicality is involved in the first step. So again, just a progressive development using the matter state, and now we're using the energy state. But as I said earlier, the Creator is familiar and works with both, and so are we. So thank you all for listening, and I think we're about to move into Alex's presentation. Again, he mentioned the One Nation Network, so we invite you in, Alex, to play the disclaimer and then carry us or enlighten us to more of the workings of the One Nation Network. And I don't think we've seen all of it yet, but thank you for joining us, Alex, and please take over.
And thank you very much for leading the charge here, Mark, and all the knowledge seekers. So let's just get this business done here. It's very important. And here we go.
Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GANs processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Okay, we
Thank you
see
very
your screen. Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. And let's I must comment, it's just truly wonderful to be here with all of you, because not only is it a great time to be alive, but you are all tuning in very, very nicely and contributing in so many ways, which is just really, really wonderful. And that's what makes our meeting so strong. I mean, we are coming up behind the Knowledge Seekers Workshop on Thursday, the Brazilian Communities Opus on Friday, and at least we are able to bring together this kind of teaching and share it across 6 continents and maybe even 7. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teachings on plasma science. We're discussing the intermediate GANS tech. Today's topic is translation. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is November the 2nd of 2025, and this is part of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. So please enjoy the trip, because we've been on a long trip. Obviously, we're discussing intermediate GANS, and has been going on for many, many years as we try to distill the information into bite-sized pieces. And what we've ended up with is a bunch of bite-sized pieces. And so as we add to the knowledge, we are conflicted, because we have to move ahead as mature knowledge seekers, but we can't leave the new knowledge seekers behind. So we always maintain that connection between that, but all of us collectively are forced to do something a little bit different these days because of we have visitors. And it's not just a matter of being nice to the visitors. It's not the kind of visitors that we have been taught to expect. And so we have to kind of, shall we say, interpret what is going on. And so which brings us to the subject of translation. And it really is exposing our confusion in terms of words. And the scientific community has its own words, but so does the spiritual community, and so does the archaeological community. And, you know, there are many, many communities, many languages all around the world, and it causes a massive amount of confusion. And what we've been trying to do through the books of Meron Tevakoli Keshe, such as book number 1, is to come up with a uniform understanding of the universal order of the creation of matter, and how it does come together with the bringing together of the matter, the dark matter, and the antimatter. And so the convergence of those 3 forces creates the one force, but that force is only one structure, and there are multiple structures like that. And in order to convey information between one structure and another structure, we have another structure, as in book number 2, the structure of the light. And that is how information moves from one place to another. And when we say information, that is a word that we are having difficulty understanding. We have, the internet, which is conveying information, and we like to do our shopping on the internet. Well, the shopping is of physical products, and yet we do this by exchanging information on the internet. We have still not resolved how to exchange products using that information other than by using a courier. So that brings us to book number 3, The Origin of the Universe, and how we are creating 2 fields from that one, which may or may not dissolve, except that we don't even recognize that field that created us. We don't even recognize the sister universe. We're having trouble with our own universe. And we're very content with just worrying about that little drop in the ocean of man's universe we call Earth. And we kind of look up to the stars and say, well, isn't that nice? But now we're looking up at the stars and we're seeing a totally different picture. So that we've been talking about the Universal Council as we understand it with Rick Crammond and the members of the Universal Council through 401 weeks, bringing together the one planet, one nation, one race for justice and world peace, and understanding the importance of it now because of the gravity of the situation, pardon the pun. The thing is that we are now on the verge of having to recognize the Universal Council of the universe and our participation in it. So we need to understand the plasma rule even more, what we call the transaction zone or a point of conflict. But is it, or is it a binding zone? And what happens in that binding zone? Well, more often than not, there's a density manifestation. So we call that an inertia density manifestation. But in that binding zone, there could be another zone that's created. So we're trying to understand what is it when we bring these 2 fields together, what exactly is it? So language becomes very important. Is it a transaction zone? Is it a conflict point? Or is it a binding zone? Or really, depending on the context, it's all 3. And the context that we're understanding is our self-serving energy binding needs. So that becomes our dimension point that we focus on. And it is so intensive that we do it at the expense of others. And the reason we do that is because, well, it's kind of easy to do. It's a lot easier for me to cut off your connection and limit your progress than it is for me to generate and create. And we find that it is indeed very, very prosperous. A point was brought up to me this week that one of the problems with binding energy at the expense of others is that the joy that is associated with creating that energy binding is diminished. And therefore, someone who is binding energy in that manner doesn't have the respect for energy. Let's say if you were struggling to meet your monthly payments and suddenly you didn't have to depend on a strategic day-to-day existence, but basically maybe you won a lottery ticket and all of a sudden you didn't have to worry about that. And because the money came easy, the money would leave easy. Well, interestingly enough, that is the same that is happening, let's say, with someone who is, shall we say, involved with in the music industry, very famous, or someone in the drug industry, very rich. And we find that they become very frivolous and very careless with their money and in fact, very extravagant. And yet these same people would not lend a beggar $5, even though they would be very happy to dump loads of money on an extravagance. And so as this extends to our status in society, as much as we complain about the price of a product, when we talk about that product, that price becomes a bragging point, and the higher the price, the more the bragging rights. Well, good. So now you are able to brag. Congratulations. However, you pay for that. And it's okay if you can earn that. But if you can't, if you're struggling to make the ends meet, well, that becomes, quite a frivolous exercise. And so we see that there are inequalities. And one of those inequalities is the way energy flows. And we look at energy as kind of a water flow. And when you look at various farming techniques, they set up terraces. And so some water is at a higher altitude than others. And until you create a connection, there's no flow. But just because you make the connection, there's still no flow until you have an external pump to start the flow. So the connection becomes that transaction zone. And what's interesting about that is that you have to start it with an external pump. But once that flow begins, you can turn off that pump, pumping it through that connection, because the balance on the terracing will create a flow in that pipe, and it'll just continue to flow. What you do have to make sure of course, is that the upper terrace is constantly filling with water. So you don't need an external pump to start the flow, but you do need a pump to pump water in some fashion to maintain that reservoir to be able to continue the flow. So that terracing connection is really by gravity. And so we're kind of used to that because it's a falling gradient. And that falling gradient is not only the transaction zone, but is the connection between the upper and the lower. And so sometimes we look at that as either a superiority or an inferiority complex. And so, of course, one of the ways that we maintain that inferiority complex is to refer to us as the fallen angels, which is kind of a thing a trap, if you will, that we fall into, because that increases density, it increases pressure, it's increased gravity as we get closer to the core of the earth. And so we become more dependent on this earth space feeding. And then we have this internal pressure of the GANs. And this is what we're talking about, the GANs tech. It explodes like a popcorn. And the reason for that is because the angular momentum is conserved. So in other words, as we fall, something else is rising. And if we are all falling, something is just not adding up, is it? How can we all be falling? So let's refer, and a lot of people do this, they refer to the Bible. And I don't often do this because everybody likes to refer to the Bible, and they do a good job, but everybody seems to come away with a different understanding of what they read. And so let's discuss one particular parable, the parable of the sower. Hear then ye the parable of the sower. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it not, then cometh the evil one, and snatcheth away that which hath been sown in his heart. This is he that was sown by the wayside, and he that was sown upon the rocky places. This is he that heareth the word, and straightway with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but endure it for a while. And when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, straightway he stumbleth. And he that was sown among the thorns, this is he that heareth the word, and the care of the world, and the deceitfulness of riches, choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. And he that was sown upon the good ground, this is he that heareth the word, and understandeth it, who verily beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. And so this is out of Matthew 13:18 to 13:23. And I've never heard about this myself, because I'm not a student of this, I must admit, frankly. But it really contributes to the louche dilemma, where we are louche harvesting, and each of us have this single-minded intention, and we see the effectiveness of it because, those who rob, cheat, and steal have this benefit that most of us don't have. So as most of us look at this, we have the same hive mind intention. I like your honey's better than my honey, so I'd like to take some. And so that becomes the supplanted Gant's intention, and it becomes the intention of the fallen angel, who has forgotten what he was sown with in terms of the true intention. And so if that intention had a seed, and that seed was implanted in a wrong place, it's understandable that there would be a limitation, shall we say. But if it was placed in a right location, it would be fruitful. And so this message is what we're talking about today, because this is what we need to do, is translate what these words mean and translate what these thoughts are. And it becomes very important because in our generation, we have a different lingo than they did in previous generations. So, what someone may call a chariot of a god, we would call a rocket ship. But, it's the words of the era. And so as we carry on with this misunderstanding through generations, we lose our vitality. And so we're seeking vitality enhancement, and the Keshe Foundation has brought forward the Universal Body Enhancement Spaceships Unit to enhance the vitality, not just regular, but super, and not just emotion, but physical. And so one of the things we need to do is stop the leaking and start the healing. So that becomes a, shall we say, a method of operation. And it's hard to do when we don't understand the 10 Commandments, and we don't understand who gave us the 10 Commandments and why they gave it to us, and they didn't give it to my dog, or my tulips. But we have other commandments, we had missing commandments, another 14, And I seem to keep talking about this one, number 11, thou shalt not lie, because it puts a lot of pressure on me, because I couldn't tell how someone was lying. And when I learned that I shouldn't listen to the words, but listen to the intention, and then I discovered, well, yeah, I can tell when someone is lying. But it became very difficult because they were still giving me the lying words. And I had to listen to those lying words, knowing that they were lying. And the pressure is on me now to fake believing them. Because if I didn't, I would create a conflict point, which I didn't want. But I wanted to hear the truth. But all I was getting was the lies. And so my intention was in conflict with the liar. And it was up to me to cope with that. And so we find that there is some form of communication that transcends the words. And it's called the Gans truthfulness. So now we understand why poker, which is a game of liars, and the best liar is the winner. But there is no poker playing in outer space because, this becomes the truth seeker's dilemma. We have to have an accountability to self. So do we accuse someone of lying, or do we just shield ourselves? But more importantly, the liar's dilemma has to have an accountability to the soul. And so do you quit lying to your soul, or do you suffer the consequences? Because when we lie, we don't always suffer the consequences immediately. Those consequences can be delayed. Well, the GANS is interacting all the time. We learned the nanocoding process of the monatomic science with the cups of life, and we understood the truth. They were the cups of life, not the cups of the pandemic. And they represented our inner space and our emotional strength, and we manufactured physical cups and emotional cups. But also in the process, we created other GANSs, CO2, calcium, zinc, copper, water, and amino acid. And now we've demonstrated the production of gold in mass quantities. So we can produce many GANSs, but there's a different cup of life, and it's called the mind. And so that is tied into the one-track cup of the universe, where we bring together the effect of the copper GANS, which is physical, and the zinc GANS, which is emotional. But then we entertain this carbogen GANS, which is not of this earth. It is a connection to the universe. And so these connections remain and give us three fields of reference, but they manifest a physicality, which is a fourth field. And in that physicality, we can do many things. So it's actually more than four. So the thing is, we have still the connection, one, the copper, the zinc, and the carbon. And it's not three, it's more than three. We just didn't say how much more than three. And who's putting the limitations on how many. So an interesting thing that science has had to grapple with, and we talked about this before in the bicameral mind. Bicameral is bi is two and cameral is room. So the mind with two rooms or two hemispheres. And we find that language learning kills brain cells. And we find that calcium is brain food. Another way I understand calcium is as a cartilage or as a bone or as a skull. It is also the seed of every cell in the body. But this seed comes from a source, and that source is in the brain. And so calcium is the nourishment and food of the brain. And that is scientifically documented. So this is nothing new. It just, if you're not talking about that subject, you might say, well, that is kind of new. And if you're not a knowledge seeker, you don't know what we're talking about when we talk about the transmutation highway, because we're so in tied down to the earth, the carbon 12 realm, which is the transmission highway, because it involves frequency, heat, and pressure. But there is a transition highway, the carbon 14 highway. And that highway allows us to connect between the transmission and the transmutation highway. And once we get to the transmutation highway, and why not? If we can go up one level, we can go up two levels, and why not? And are there any other levels beyond that? Well, we are still carbon and counting up to 16. So, how far do we go? I don't know. How big is large? So when we look at the bicameral mind and we say, okay, well, there's two hemispheres. Well, how does the copper GANs and the zinc GANs communicate when the copper is physical and the zinc is emotional? But forget that. Forget that. We also have the calcium GANs as brain food. Well, forget that. But how do we connect with the carbon 14 language translation, which is the language of the universe, the carbogen? Which language are we using? Which translator do we have to hire? If I'm into physicality and I'm using words, can I translate those words into emotion? Well, I went to a show last night. It was really, really good. Well, can you envision the emotions that I went through in this really, really good show? Or I went to a concert. The singer was fabulous. Wow, I can imagine in my mind fabulous. Can you? How fabulous was it? Well, and how do you measure it? So it's not conveying the true images. And so you just had to be there. That would have been the answer. But, if we're connecting with the universe, then the same argument applies, doesn't it? You just had to be there, in order to get the true translation. And so this is the dilemma that we're facing, because our society is very much confused. Even if we were all speaking English, we have confusion. But we need a translator to translate to all the different languages. So in all our broadcasts, we're broadcasting to all the continents. Well, all the continents speak different languages. There are English-speaking people in all the continents, but not all the people speak English. So this becomes a point of confusion. So how do we have these cup relationships? So it boils down to the magnetical gravitational relationship of each of the cups and the environment of the earth. And so don't forget the cup of the universe, the soul radiance. And so somehow the soul has to communicate with the emotion and the physicality and the earth and create that inertia field of our physical reality, which is the product of the bicameral mind manifesting into our physicality. And so we find that something is something, and nothing is nothing. Even when we look into space, we say, oh, well, there's nothing there. Really? Well, there's a lot of stuff there. It's just that it's not something, that you understand, but it is something, and it is always something as opposed to being something else. And so wherever you are, that becomes your transaction zone. So if you're in the GANs, which we're talking about, the GANs tech, on the left-hand side, you see the cup from the top down, and you see a circular field start to be created within the GANs. And on the right side, in the carafe there's actually a hole in the GANs. And there's no GANs in that hole. And so that transaction zone now becomes a hole, and it gets filled with water. But why is there a hole in that GANs and the water fills it there? Why is there no hole in the water? And what about the air that's above that? And then, there's so many questions that come around, and, we just can't see it anymore because we have emerged from that physicality. And yet, when I give this to someone to hold it, they say, "Oh, I can really feel the energy." Oh, really? Can you explain to me in words what you feel? Oh, well, yeah, I feel kind of warm and peaceful. Well, that's pretty precise, isn't it? I'm sure you all, can interpret that. So what we're understanding is that when two forces to come together, they're coming together based on the susceptibility of the convergence, but it creates a singularity. And then you bring other fields together and they all work together in duality. But we didn't say which duality. So when we look at the star formation, it has 4 fields. And the duality is really the magnetical field, which we could say is in singularity, but the gravitational field, which is 3 fields of the star formation, well, that's not in duality, that's in a trinity. And then they all come together and they create this transaction zone, which now is a plasma energy that has no tangibility. So rotating balls filled with GANs create a field and then create a transaction zone with no tangibility. Imagine that. And if I were to tell you about that, would you be able to, in your mind's eye, see the picture? Wouldn't it be better if you made the cup of life yourself and seen that, where you can see the carbon nanocrystals, and you say, well, I had a copper wire and I nano-coated it, but the coating turned into carbon-6, and I had to have a field alignment. And then once I got that alignment, then I got a magnetical gravitational orientation. But the energy has to move, and it has to move in a direction. And so there was a flow. Without a direction, there would be no flow. It would just kind of be a lump. And so we find that energy is always in motion. And so it's looking for that Magrav transfer state. And the reason for that is because that energy has to flow and has to move based on susceptibility. So we find that in the GAN state, that we can go from one side of the equation of the conservation of energy to the other side. But we can also go into different energy states. So we can drop down from the GAN state to the nano state and then drop down to the atomic state. Or we can go from the atomic state up to the monatomic nano state and then from there go into the GAN state, because it's a two-way street. And the reason it's a two-way street is because it has to obey the conservation of inertia. And this is true of everything, including communication. So what is different about the GANs from the nano is that the GANs has a high negative charge and therefore becomes magnetical. But this magnetical charge comes about because of the number of points on the surface. And to equalize those points, there's a positive charge at the gravitational core. And so to accommodate all of this, there has to be a Gans explosion. And so that explosion puts gaps, bigger gaps, and it's filled with gas. And that's why it's called Gans. Gas is a nanosolid. So now we have the Gans, and we have the pattern of energy flow in direction and in intensity. And so if we look at our bodies the way we're manifest, I wonder if the earth is the same way. Is the earth matter transacted in singularity or duality? So if we can take the Gans and manifest gold in mass quantities, then isn't that a replication of how the earth did it? The same kind of inertia density manifestation. So therefore, it wasn't just one Gans, was it? It must have been multiple Ganses. And once you have one transaction in singularity, you must have a complementary transaction in that duality. But as we said before, it could be in a Gans state, it could be in an atomic state, could be in a monatomic state, or it could be in a plasma state. Who's to say? It all depends on the susceptibility. But what we do know is that as miners, all we do is, in our self-serving energy binding ways, we steal it from Earth. So our claim to fame is that we can find the gold and we can excavate the gold, but that's kind of limited in your bragging rights because man up to now hasn't been able to produce the gold. So if we look at how the gold is produced, it's just a fragment of the complexity of the whole earth, because the whole earth is not gold. It is a collection of different elements on the periodic table of elements. And each one has a gravitational stability, and something is always something as opposed to being something else. So it has a dimensional portability. And so each of these dimension points, each one, and whatever it is, we don't specify. Well, we're just saying that in different energy states, pick one point and another point and another point, and the convergence of those 3 points gives you a basis for that nuclear feeding inertia, and then creates that inertia density manifestation. And then you get this periodic table of physical matter, which is represented by all the Earth space range details. And we see all these things that, we're looking to sustain life on this planet, beginning with the amino acid of the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen, and the emotion of the zinc and the physicality of the copper, the solution of the sodium chloride and the potassium and magnesium and calcium. And then the fundamental component of our emotional structure, the blood, is with iron, and the energy component being gold, which is why it's so precious. But not only, because every element on the periodic table of elements is precious. Just because you feel that one is more precious than another, you have to understand Magrav as a counterweight. So you can capture that field in a singularity, but it has an angular momentum and an angular density, and we refer to it as the fallen angels. But I prefer to refer to us as the arrived angels. It's just how we cross the flux lines of gravity. Are we dropping or are we landing? And who's doing the talking, isn't it? Because each one has a point of view. And if we understand this Gans counterweight, we can see that as we move through these flux lines, imagine these flux lines in a cup of GANS. That cup of GANS has water in it. And so each level in that water, although it doesn't have white lines like on a paved road, there are flux lines. And we see some GANS floating up and some GANS floating down, and there doesn't seem to be a current. So there is motion, and it goes through each of these gradients by gradient transition. And so to maintain that energy state, and as we know that to maintain your MAGRAPH state, you have to give and take. And so in the process of giving and taking, you can either increase or decrease your density. And so in order to move up, you have to drop one and pick up another. But interestingly, to go down, you have to drop one and pick up another. So the question is, are you picking up something that is less dense, or are you picking up something that is more dense? And that defines your motion. And then how fast you go is the steepness, the transition gradient itself. So we find that this energy in motion is always counterbalanced, because we created this GANS from, shall we say, thin air, but more appropriately, because of the amino acid that also was produced, we should say, well, it came from the fat air. And we find that this energy in motion is represented by hydrogen as an energy pack. But hydrogen is not just hydrogen. It too has a diatomic structure, and it has a covalent bond there. But there are two possibilities. In the orthohydrogen, the poles are alike. In the parahydrogen, the poles are opposite. But since they're balanced on both sides, there is no change in the conformity. But there is the same covalent bond, but there's a different countermeasure. So in other words, the energy exchange is different. And so we have this difference, which represents the difference in the energy transaction coming from the source, or the field connection through carbon-14, or through the universe, which is carbon-60. And, we have many more unanswered questions, but now we're coming confronted to the point where we can't say, I don't know anymore. But what we are going to have to say is, we don't have the answers at this point in time. But the problem or the question is there. And now we have to be confronted with the question, how does this happen? Where did it come from? Where did we come from? Where are we going? And, what's it all about, Alfie? So we have this dynamic plasma. It's a field capture in singularity, but this inertia field capture actually has two singularities, and it's the interaction of these fields, and it gives you not only the containment within the plasma field, but it also creates these flux lines, and then it also creates these magnetical fields that go around the plasma. And we have to remember that the interaction with another field is what's causing the manifestation of this plasma. So we have a dynamic plasma actually created. And you could say, well, it's in one field, or it's in the other field, or it's a combination of the two fields. So, but we have to make sure that in our words, we have the right reference and the right context. But remember that what we're seeing in that manifestation is a product of these substructures in the background. So it's like when we look at the Earth and how it relates to others, we look at them as interacting spheres, where the North Pole is connected to the South Pole, and the South Pole is connected to the North Pole. So right away, a transfer state that is moving in two directions. And so we see that the poles can flip and the energy can flip right along with it. And if the North is the giving and the South is the taking, well, now we understand how things are crossing over. And that's the difference between the bicameral mind and the physicality. And so this becomes a transaction zone where we are trying to balance this mass point of view, where the mass of one is part of the equation and it involves the mass of the other. We just didn't say which other. We don't know. But we have to take it into account. And so in most cases, we take the simplest route. We just take what we can see and we ignore the rest. Well, we're missing this radiance pole flipping because there's a polyatomic gradient transitioning that goes from this feeding radiance to this feedback radiance, understanding that our plasma is gravitational in the core. And we have this vertical emission. And so this emission goes all around, and it's a magnetical plasma. And of course, it's magnetical, but it moves. And so it's moving to another point. It's still a magnetical plasma, but at that point, it becomes gravitational. And so now we come in going through this transaction zone with this confounding notion that the magnetical plasma is magnetical in its departure and gravitational in its arrival, but it's still magnetical plasma. Well, when does this thing change and what is representing the change? Well, the motion itself is the transaction zone. And once you've achieved that, then it continues to move. And in order to do that, that magnetical plasma will have to be magnetical again. And so it continues from pole to pole, and that's how it moves, but also from plasma to plasma. And where is this excess energy coming from? Is it always coming from the core, or is it a cosmic ray feeding that is also coming in? Well, if it's coming into the magnetical plasma that is surrounding the plasma core, then there must be a gravitational feeding as well to balance it off. And that is a simple context in the plasma reality. But we're living in a physical reality. And so we have to understand that the exchange of energy is done exactly the same way. And if it's done that way here, then it's done that way everywhere, because these are the universal laws of this emission, that within our core, we have a transaction zone. Within the motion in the magnetical field, we have a transaction zone. And that transaction zone is being fed by another plasma field. And so that too becomes a transaction zone. So now we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 transaction zones. And all we were talking about was the feeding radiance and the feedback radiance coming together. Well, this is getting very complicated. But listen, it's very stable, isn't it? Because look at our existence. It's all based on the energy exchange. So the energy is always positive. So it's not the charge. The charge is negative or positive based on its direction. And that direction and the intensity is based on the polar energy of the magnetical emission. And what affects is the rotation of the field and the speed of it, the strength of it, and the direction of it. And then it converges with the absorption of the gravitational field. So the interaction of the magnetic and gravitational fields in all positions is what's going on. So now we're looking at many multitude of transactions. And we can't stop and look at each individual one. We just look at the whole thing. One is a discharge and one is a recharge. Let's just keep it simple. Look at the gravitational falling, what we call the binding zone, the binding points. And we just have an arbitrary point of view that has come together somewhere, and then we have all of these loose ends. And we say, well, are they just end, or are they connected to something? Well, we can't see what they're connected to, so we just kind of say, well, we ignore it. But so when we look at the star formation, now we understand that to maintain that star formation, there has to be a gravitational magnetical relationship. So that involves 2 points of view. But the net point of view is a magnetical gradient charge. And so it comes together with another manifestation point of view, magnetical gravitational, with a net gravitational gradient charge. And both of them are susceptible to increase or decrease. And so the coming together of the transaction zone, which is the gravitational inertia point, is also subject to change. And so things are turning and churning all the time, and it's perfectly normal. So look at you sitting in the chair. You're not getting dizzy, are you? You're very stable. And so this concept of the duality, we have to understand that it involves 2 points that work together in tandem. It's a partnership. So we call it the twinity, where you have one field and interacting with another field. And so there's a transaction zone there. But then when you look at the plasma fields, they can involve different aspects of matter, or they can involve different aspects of the plasma. But they are duality, and that duality can interact with another duality. So that too becomes the transaction zone. So this point of 2 points, or this point of twinity, is what we have to understand is the source of the product of what we have. That becomes the inertial density manifestation point. So even when we look at natural creation, we have to understand that it follows the same pattern, that this motion is ray motion and is creation. It's natural creation and is balanced off by natural decay. So when we look at the decay aspect of it, this is in the background, and it too is balanced. And so between the two is a boundary and a bonding area. And just because we don't understand it, we kind of round it off to the nearest dollar. We don't count the nickels and dimes. So this concept of the twinity applies to the nanotech and the picotech and the startech. And so we call it the twinity of the nanotech and the twinity of the Ganztech. And so when we go to the store at the Keshe Foundation, we see many references to the twinity, and that's what it is. So when you have this twinity, it implies a transaction zone automatically. And this is where, shall we say, the benefit comes. So the physical translation of all of this energy exchange is all manifest through these polyatomic inertia gradients. And some are converging in a gravitational manner, and some are converging in a magnetical manner, because in order to create this overall field, you have to have energy flowing in 2 directions. So each field is magnetical gravitational, each interaction is magnetical gravitational, and each layer is magnetical gravitational, and each and every one of these is a transaction zone. So altogether, it looks very complex, but in reality, it's very, very simple, because the maggrav acts as a counterweight. It has 2 points of view, and they seem to be opposite. Well, they're not opposite per se as a conflict, but they could be opposite as a binding zone, or they could be opposite as a transaction zone. So that transaction zone becomes that gravitational inertia point. Does it retain its manifestation, or does it depart? Does it actually leave, as we saw on the cover of book number 3? So we understand this physical affinity because we are physical, but we are just bags of GANs. And so when you look at a GANS ball, its physical affinity is the emotional charge. So how do we translate our physical words to emotional words? Because if you're in Georgia and you're a Georgia peach, and how much does your husband love you? Well, my husband loves me Cadillac. Oh, is that a fact? Well, my husband loves me Mercedes. So now it becomes a competition. But when we look at the emotional affinity, now we see something else. We see the two hemispheres, and we have to go through this language translation where we have the physical copper and the emotional zinc. So we have to translate that, and we have the calcium food and the carbogen connection and some other source, and then we have the soul as the interpreter. So we have all these different languages, and we have to translate them. Well, which language are we using? Because the languages that we know, such as English, French, or German, or whatever, is not the language of the soul, is it? So we have these word limitations, and we talked about that. You know, we have to keep it in context. We have to have a reference, an environment, a belief, an experience. But they're interchange errors. We find that references in the Bible to the lords is plural, and they talk about lords on horseback. So these words actually become a barrier, and they call it Babylon, where we've suddenly introduced many different languages. Why should everybody speak the same language? That would be too easy. So why do we have all these different languages? So we need translation. Why? Because we have errors. We confuse gods with lords. Well, how many gods are there? And do they ride on horseback? So we have these counterweight measures we have to take into account, where we look at the most important state for us is the physical state, and we measure things by weight. That's gravitational. But in the atomic state, we measure it by mass, and it too is gravitational. But when we get into the next state, which is the nuclear state, we measure it by Teslas, which is the measurement of the magnetical field forces. Well, in plasma, we measure it by time, and that too is magnetical. So we can counterweight within each state or in between states, and we have all the possibilities because of this dynamic plasma relationship. The horizontal transmission and the vertical transition and the transaction zone of that Earth space point within and the Earth space field with the rotating fields and the flux lines all around. And so when we look at the creation of the plasma and how it affects life, that transaction zone is the bringing together of the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. It's fundamental to the creation of life. These are the building blocks of life, but they create a structure within a structure. So these structures have to all complement each other. and they have a magnetical gravitational relationship. So that becomes whatever is manifest as a result of that becomes a transaction zone. So we talk about the carbon inertia highway, the carbon 12, carbon 14, and the carbon 16, and understand that they operate in duality, but that doesn't say that they're not operating in duality with something in the background. And if that thing in the background also has inertia fields, who's to say it's not operating with something in its background? We just can't differentiate these things because we don't have a reference, but we can acknowledge that it does exist. And so we found in the 603rd Knowledge Seekers Workshop, sure, we have a vertical alignment and we have path links and we have the infinity loop, but there's a different path as well. And each path leads to inertia threshold crossing. So each manifestation being an inertia point, did we say which manifestation energy state? So when we're talking about the GANS tech, what's important to understand is how it compares to water, because GANS flows in water. And so we can see that the water can exchange energy, and we know that water can give and take energy, and so does the GANS. So the GANS exchanges magnetical energy, and likewise it exchanges gravitational energy. And now we know why. It has the conservation of energy rules that it follows and sets up MAGRAPH pathways. We know that the gravitational intensity is the attraction feedback, but the magnetical outintensity is the repulsion feeding. And so atomically, we look at the electron and we say, okay, well, the electron is very, very tiny and the neutron is very, very large. And, we've been given that and we see the difference. But do we really see the difference? Because we now have the Midas touch. We look at the Peace Dome reactor where it creates a dimension point we call shielding, and another dimension point we call star positioning, and then another dimension point we call the possession. And this is what we want, don't we? We all like the gold, don't we? And so our unity within the community is reflective of our inner space unity, but we give our time and attention to. So the translation at that binding zone is to translate the mental language with the physical language, because there's a bonding, and the soul language and the consciousness language. There too is a bonding, and the energy and intention language, and there is a bonding. And so these are all different languages, and the only one that speaks English or any language in the land of Babylon is the physical. None of the other categories talk physically. So we have an undifferentiated beginning. And the only way that we can understand things is with words and with vision and physicality. So the neutron created the atom, and the atom did not balance with the neutron. Something was missing. And so that's this energy that's in motion, and it's in motion all over the place. But which one do you pick? So either way, the one that arrives at that transaction zone came from the darkness within, and it manifests in its physicality, and that's where we had the light without. But in the darkness, it still had to be manifest. So we just can't see what was going on there. And so we ignore that. And those things we have difficulty with. We have difficulty discussing about gods and lords and all sorts of other things because we don't have the right translation of the understanding. So the fundamental principle matter is this energy that's out there in the vacuum of space. We can't see it. It looks empty, but it's full of PM ticks because nothing is nothing. You've got all these energy packs coming, and when they come together and converge as antimatter, dark matter, and matter gen, all of these factors create this plasma gen conversion. And until it comes together with the Earth space and has that field interaction, which we call inertia, in that manifestation, then we have our own magrav bodies gravitationally created on this planet. And we call that life. And it's our physicality, our body, our coming together from the source, which we have to remember is the convergence of these plasmas. And one plasma would be magnetical and one plasma would be gravitational, because there's no two plasmas of the same. So they come together in this transaction zone and they create this field. And then that field has to be manifest, and it can manifest gravitationally. And we know that because we have oxygen as a non-visible gas, and yet it is totally gravitational. And the only way that we can see it is because it leaves a visible fingerprint in the emission spectrum. And so that represents the emission light of the oxygen, and it's crossing that threshold coming from the plasma state into the physical state of matter. Or we could say, more accurately, from the plasma state to the plasma state of matter. Not the same thing. So the matter plasma we see as physical because we can touch it and see it, but the matter gen plasma is the plasmatic plasma is magnetical because we can't touch it or see it. But this is all part of the matter plasma dimension, and we are feedback dominant. That in terms of the plasma science, the matter plasma is part of the gravitational understanding of the one side of the conservation of energy. We now have to acknowledge the other side. It is becoming imperative with respect to our existence. So this plasma matter dilemma isn't just in understanding the GAN state, but the next neighbor, being the plasma state, also crosses this magrav energy transfer state. But it is part of the substructure of our physicality. As we go into higher energy states, we become less dependent on that physicality. So we have to drop one and pick another up. But do we have to drop off all of our physicality, or is that our bounty? Is that the product of our existence? Is that the profit? Is that the reward? So is this molecular matter, the coming together, representative of that communication link, the covalent bond between two masses? And so you have one mass with a magnetical gravitational relationship and another mass with a gravitational magnetical relationship, and the transaction zone in between, which we call the bonding zone. And the same is true with the atomic matter, because we have the neutron manifesting into the atomic energy plus the PM tick. And it's a two-way street. And we know that we can do that because we all did it. We all crossed the threshold of matter, where we took the singularity of each field and created the duality of the magrav of the inertia field, and then converted it into a physical field. So the arrival of that physical field had to cross the transaction zone. And how did we do that? Did we do it with language, or was language a barrier? So when we look at the dimension star formation, we had to translate the dimension points of view. There's a soul point of view. There's a soul of physicality point of view. This is setting up the threshold of awareness. Then we have the physical interpretation. That's the collective point of awareness. So how do we translate all of these when the only point of view that can interpret anything in English or with words or with language is the physical one? Everything else is talking about a completely different language. And yet we can manage to communicate somehow. But now we're going to have to communicate with the rest of the universe because the rest of the universe knows by connection. You can't yell at them because they can't hear you, because they don't recognize frequency. You can't fight with them because they won't fight with you. And you can't lie to them because they see your true intention. So we have to find out how the universe is having this contiguous connection. And in order to participate, we have to understand that this contiguous connection is done through the translation to truthfulness. There's no lying in outer space. And the worst thing is when you lie to yourself. So, we talk about this artificial intelligence. Well, that's, there is a generational point of view, and the artificial intelligence increases the speed of the generational learning. And then there's this overwhelming history that we have. So the artificial intelligence increases the speed of learning the historical context. But what about the transgenerational awareness, the teachings of the Creator? What artificial language are we using now? So we're dependent on this supplementation due to consumption. And our consumption is an acquired knowledge, which is a conditional teaching by ancient teachers. But the Creator gave us unconditional teaching. And so now we have a new awareness. So we see there's a historical threshold between the cosmic feeding and the loosh harvesting. And we need to cross that threshold, because if we don't, then we don't understand humanity's cross as a burden, where we have the physical connection between the soul and the physicality, and the plasmatic connection between the solar physicality and either the soul or the physicality. So it's humanity's cross as a burden, or it's humanity crossing that threshold through awareness and heading into uncharted territory where we are the herd at the turning point. There are many stars all beyond the monatomic state of the nano, and they're all covering the full range from decay to radiation. So the AI is actually ancestral intelligence, and we are the technology. We are that inertia product, and we are the image of our dimensional convergence point. And so we get to choose. And in order to do that, we have to also choose how we shield ourselves. We have to have this inertia of humanity shielding from hostiles, from aggression, from environmental harm, from fear mongering, and from emotional abuse. And can we do that? What is our skill set? So we find that the limiting factor on this planet is time. So we use time as a counterweight. We see transmission as a frequency. We see transition as an amplitude, and transmutation as a containment. But we have a physicality at the fulcrum, and we have the soul of physicality on one side and the soul on the other side. So we use as a time as a measure, but time as an Earth space reference, because outer space is zero time as a travel reference. So time on this planet is measured versus zero time as a counterweight. The two operate as duality, and we didn't understand what time really meant. But now we're coming to that confrontation. We're crossing that memory threshold, that tipping point. Sure, we have this long-term memory, but freedom connects us to the real memory because there's different memories. There's a lifelong memory, there's a historical memory, and an ancestral memory. But overall, there's a universal memory, and they all speak a different language. So how do we interpret this? How do we understand this? Well, the fact of the matter is that energy states go through a transition, which allows for elevation, which we call physical matter state to energy state, or inertia, which allows energy state to physical matter state. And so when we talk about elevation, that involves expansion, like the Gans explosion. So we see that energy is portable. It can go from state to state. And so can our understanding, because we are all part of the dynamic soul initiators. Well, who are they? Well, there's the soul of the creator. There's the soul of the earth. There's the soul of the family of humanity. There's the soul of man. There's the soul of the body. There's even a soul of the cells. And no translation is needed. You don't have to say a word. You don't even have to explain it. But we try because we are accustomed to ignoring the soul food that is coming our way. So we have to tune in to the cosmic rays, plug into the creator, if you will. So we have to turn on that energy and drop out of our resistance so that we can receive this collective energy that is coming together at that inertia point. And so you get to provide the pattern, and you get the energy, or you get more or less. I guess it all depends on how much what you want and what you give your time and attention to. So for 614 Knowledge Seekers workshops in a row, spanning over 11 years, we've been suddenly confronted with the science of plasma science transcending the limitations of nuclear science. And in that process, we're seeking that greater oneness. What oneness is that? And so there are many ways to interpret that. And since we have many languages, we need many translators. Well, we're in the process of turning diamonds into gold in mass quantities because we're in the May 10th of 2025 crossing of the threshold that allows us to seek out the Gans affinity of truth. And so we're seeking research teams to continue this because really we're in the early stages of it. But now we are going to grow up very, very quickly to the reality. And don't we see that around the world where through wars the parents die and the young children have to grow up very fast. They don't get to play in the sand at the age of 10 or 11. They have to learn how to carry a gun. Young men. So we need a rescue. We need a technology rescue because our beds are burning. And that involves a scientific, financial, political rescue, manifests as a preservation rescue, doesn't it? And so we have to understand consumption. We have to understand creation. These are all part of the rescue process. And so we've been practicing. And in October, we just finished the transmutation tests for that month. And we'll see what the new horizon is coming because things are changing as we speak. So when we look at the translation of intention, what determines a successful nation? Well, it has to have a determination and an honesty which depends on action. It depends on truthful action. And of course, it depends on dependability. And it depends on the integrity of the GANS translator. And if the GANS translator can't lie, then it depends on the interpretation of the GANS, of the cup of emotion with the cup of physicality, which are in two different languages, and words don't matter. That's the problem. So sometimes the seeds fall on the good ground, and sometimes seeds fall on the other ground. And so we can move these seeds to the better ground using the One Nation Network, opening up the blinds of One Nation Network at a time. And that time is now. So here we are. Our mission is to bring peace on earth and join humanity with the universal community. We want to bring man as equal to all the beings in the universe by teaching the plasma science and technology equally to everyone, that no one is left out and no one is abused due to the lack of knowledge. And we do this through the peace treaty. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teachings on plasma science. So we're welcoming all the beautiful knowledge seekers of the carbon nations, learning about the new selection process of the new organic plasma science. There's a World Peace Treaty. Choose it, sign it unconditionally, and mean it sincerely. See, the point of the true GANS tech is to cross these polyatomic boundaries. The wars on Earth space do not translate across the peace dome. Is the inertia of the present governed by the dimensions of history? Well, it's time to learn the history of self in a universal context, because the GANS is a peaceful superconductor of true intentions. The GANS tech needs translators for each of the matter state, plasma state, and universal state. So we need to continue to deliver the plasma science daily via the Peace Dome in a practical exchange for peace on Earth. So welcome to the new golden outer space age. Humanity and all. I hope you enjoyed this trip. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Let's see if any of the participants, you've aroused any sort of questions or perplexities within them that they'd like to ask a question of you or state something that they understand. Again, it does look like some new teachers are sort of coming in. He said they have a lot to teach the man. So perhaps we'll have the teachings done in a different way. I'm not sure how this is going to happen. Are they going to use their voices, or will it be a plasmatic transfer? But he said they had a lot to teach the man, so there's got to be an interaction coming at some point. And how that knowledge is going to be transferred is, again, I'm just wondering. I was thinking the One Nation Network may have a role to play in that, as we could sort of use that to transfer matter state knowledge to the visitors, and the visitors could use that to transfer other knowledges that they may possess, in addition to them teaching, I guess. I know he referred to teaching. So what is this teaching that they're going to do? Does that mean you'll be obsolete, Alex, or I'll be obsolete as they take over the teachings, or something else is happening here?
Well, we won't be obsolete. We may be reassigned, but the thing is, the teaching is a two-way street. And if we understand that, then, we can't just look at it as, they're going to come here and they're going to teach everything, to us. It's just like, in this context here today, I'm playing the role of teachers, but don't assume that I know everything, because I'll tell you, in my point of view, I don't know very much. So whatever I know is minuscule compared to what the knowledge that is out there. So it just behooves all of you to gain the knowledge from other sources. And each of us has access to the Creator. Each of us has that connection. And we don't have a language barrier for that. It's universal. That's what it means to be part of the universal community. And that connection is unconditional. Why is it unconditional? Because it's peaceful. So that means warmongers who impose conditionality are basically, tearing up their tickets to the universal state. And that's not my problem, that's their problem. My problem is to fulfill my purpose. And it's wonderful to be here, able to talk to you and to give my point of view. So I'm hoping and trusting that it's beneficial to you. And so all of us together take that knowledge and understanding and be able to do more and be more collectively, regardless of the blockages that we have with the limitations of words and the new understanding of the conveyance of emotion and the interaction of emotion with the translation process. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if any of the participants have a question they'd like to ask. I just can't understand how we're going to fall when we don't even know these beings in a way. I mean, most of humanity, he says, this is a pitfall that we're going to be up against, that they'll, I guess, treat them as just because they know a bit more. How are we going to fall for this? I don't know. But let's see if anyone else has any. I mean, the knowledge seekers are being positioned that we certainly won't be fooled, but are they going to be promoted as some sort of gods or something from space or declare themselves? It just doesn't seem to mesh with the ethos that we've been taught.
But it does mesh with our historical interpretation. We studied mythology, we studied the Greek gods, and we studied the gods with their chariots and their chariots of fire. So we've been there and done that. But clearly, from our point of view, we have advanced as a civilization. And so things have changed. Now, what does that mean exactly in terms of change? We say, well, we've progressed from being cavemen, and we now live in condominiums, which are really high-rise caves. So has anything really changed? We've been fighting for thousands of years. Has anything changed there? Well, we are coming to the realization that we haven't taken enough into account, and we're going to be coming face to face with that reality. And, it's just happening. It's like, it's like a special, you be put on notice. You live this comfy life in false understanding, and now there's a new understanding coming, and you have to cope with it. And do we have words in the English language to convey that message, or are we going to have to learn an entirely new language? Well, what is easiest to understand is the universal language. We don't need a translator for that.
Okay. Very good. Anyone else want to bring up an issue or a question or state something? All right, not hearing anything.
Mark, let me thank the audience here for allowing me to continue to present. And, I'm really grateful to the input for a lot of the knowledge seekers here in every way. Your contributions are immense, far more than, we give ourselves credit for it, because collectively we are contributing to the new understanding of the universal teachings. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for all your support. And let's bring peace and prosperity to this planet. I think it's overdue. Back to you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Let me just bring up the three wise men. And of course, the other oil that sort of goes with it. And of course, this is where you can sort of start tuning your own reactors. And only I think you have that sort of control over it, about this thinking, speaking, and acting good. Easier said than done, but I think this creates that shielding. And I always thought that even before. And then when I heard Mr. Keshe say that this 3I is creating a repulsive atmosphere around it, that nothing can sort of, any of the negative things can actually penetrate within the structure. So this is, in a way for us to create a shielding or an atmosphere around us that allows that same sort of replication of a protective shield, in a way. Not that you'll be 100% completely protected, but it's certainly a way to approach it and tune our reactors into a more elevated position. Again, by giving rather than trying to take away from others through our thoughts or our words or our actions. And then, of course, if you can apply that, you will feel proud about the work you do, and you'll feel proud about the person you are, and you'll feel proud about the difference we're all making, I think. But again, it's for you to apply this. And I think through the technology, this will become easier and easier. And of course, the feeding will move us away from the killing and destructive nature gradually and slowly and collectively. Anyone else want to bring anything else? So we encourage you to apply the gift of the three wise men, which just in the last few years, I've sort of become aware of it. Never realized that I missed. I just thought perhaps it was just giving some physical things to the other. But now we know that the gift of the wise men is much deeper and not in the physical range, so to speak, although they do talk about acting good as well. I guess we could put that in the physical dimension. All right, if there's no other further thoughts, comments, questions, we'll play the final disclaimer and the meeting will come to an end. I want to thank everyone for being here today. We appreciate your presence. And again, we're all carrying a very small corner of a very large carpet. So if there are no other questions, or are there other questions that someone would like to state? Okay, thank you all. Yes, Claudia says. Then again, we're learning from each other. We're going to learn from some new teachers. And of course, we're going to be connected to the universal knowledge, as I understand it, through the One Nation Network. So we have a number of ways, in a way, that will start to experience more and more enlightenment, I would say. But as he said, beware not to fall for, it just doesn't seem to add up with the ethos of the universe. That I don't know who would pronounce them to be gods from the universe or something like this, just because they know a little bit more. I don't know if we'll be taking the opposite sort of, and of course, defending them, but at the same time, they don't know everything, and maybe that's where we'll come into play. Sort of a counterweight on that, where we think this is everything in the matter state. We'll be able to, as knowledge seekers, explain a little bit more on this energy dimension, although it does sound in the matter state they're past us with this, but in the pure workings with the soul, perhaps we have a leg up, and we'll be teaching that. So again, I don't know how all this is going to work out, but it's planned and it's set and it's going to be delivered. And as we know, the visitors have already arrived. It's just a matter of manifestation and interaction, which he said, this is about the time for humanity to open up to this sort of bigger dimension that we're not really aware of. And of course, the structures here haven't allowed us to become aware of it, or much of it, let's say. Any other thoughts, questions, or comments? Thank you again for being here. Have an amazing rest of your day. Let's just make sure we're sharing everything, and I'll play the final disclaimer, and the meeting will come to an end, and we'll see you in one of the next sessions. Continue to give wellness energies to Mr. Keshe. I don't know what the issue is there, but he seemed to be extremely sick, or at least stated he was. So again, another way to practice this giving of energies for the elevation of others. And that includes Mr. Keshe as well. So thank you all, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.